Oh, the food tastes awful again. It's hard to enjoy it when you're so unhappy. Marrying you was a mistake, and being born into this family feels like another mistake. Having two sick people in the house is exhausting. Whenever my husband looks at me, he just complains. I don't want his words to upset his sick parents. My name's Chloe. I'm 34. We've been married for 5 years. We met through a friend when I was 29 and my husband was 31. After finishing college, I lost both my parents to illness one after the other. My husband, Sam, wanted to get married quickly, and I thought he was serious about it. But now I think he just didn't want to be left behind because all his friends were getting married. We started talking about marriage after only 6 months of dating, and I met his family. They were nicer to me than I expected, especially when they found out my parents had passed away. His mom helped me with the wedding planning like my own mom would have, and I was really thankful. So, I didn't mind the idea of living with his parents after we got married. Actually, I felt very welcomed. Chloe, your coffee tastes really good. Thanks. My dad, who passed away, loved coffee, and I do too because of him. Sometimes I even blend different types of beans myself. I was so passionate about coffee that I wanted to open a cafe with my dad someday. After my dad died, I lost my love for making coffee, but my father-in-law really likes the coffee I make. When I see how happy he is drinking it, it reminds me of my dad, and sometimes I cry. But my husband Sam doesn't care much about coffee. He can't even tell if it's instant or brewed from beans. He always says instant is probably better. I love cooking, but Sam doesn't seem to care about food. He never compliments my cooking and thinks all food tastes the same. But my mother-in-law enjoys cooking with me, which makes me happy. I always wanted to cook with a daughter like her. Chloe, you know so many recipes. You've been teaching me a lot, thank you. I love cooking with you every day. Sam didn't help with chores, but my in-laws always appreciated what I did. So married life was good. But 2 years ago, my mother-in-law got sick. She didn't need to go to the hospital, but she had to rest sometimes. Chloe, I'm sorry. I'm feeling better today, so I can help with chores a bit. Please take a break sometimes. I'm okay, don't worry about it. But Mom, Chloe is really good at housework. Sam, don't say that. Do you realize how much Chloe helps us every day? You can work without worry because Chloe is here. You should show some gratitude. Taking care of my husband's parents is something I'm grateful for. It's not hard for me to look after my mother-in-law, but it bothers me that Sam doesn't appreciate me. After my mother-in-law got sick, Sam started complaining about the house being gloomy. He began coming home late and working more on his days off. Then I noticed makeup on his clothes, lingering perfume, and other suspicious signs. When I confronted him, he admitted to having an affair. He said he met her at a bar where he went with colleagues because he didn't want to come home early and help with caregiving. I was shocked by his lack of guilt and the ridiculousness of his excuse for cheating. It made me angry and frustrated to think he was doing this while I was taking care of the house and his mother. But my father-in-law got really mad and scolded Sam, who seemed to feel really sorry at that moment. He said sorry and promised not to cheat again. So I decided not to divorce him. But honestly, I was more worried about leaving my sick mother-in-law than staying with Sam. I couldn't imagine Sam taking care of his mom, and I thought it would be hard for my father-in-law, who was still working, to do it alone. Then, when my father-in-law turned 65, he retired. On the day he retired, Sam was more interested in how much money he'd get from his dad's pension than appreciating his dad's years of work. It seemed like Sam was counting on getting some of his dad's pension, but his dad's answer was totally unexpected. I can't give you any money from my pension, he said. I'll only get enough to live on. What? So why did I put up with everything all this time, taking care of my mother-in-law and living with her? What are you talking about? You barely do anything to help your mom. Just living in the same house doesn't count as taking care of her. After that, Sam's mean words got worse. It seems he only acted sorry when caught cheating because he was hoping to get some of his dad's pension. I should have married a richer woman. This marriage was a mistake. Stop it, Sam. Chloe has been good to you. Shut up. My mom is just a bother. How can you talk about your own mom like that? This house is so sad. I'm stuck with a useless wife, a boring dad, and a bothersome mom. Even though his father-in-law warned him many times, Sam wouldn't listen, so he started working more, even on weekends. I can't help but think he's cheating again, just like before. But then my father-in-law fell in the garden and hurt his back badly, so he couldn't get out of bed. Taking care of my in-laws was hard, but they cared for me and always seemed sorry, so I didn't mind too much. But it bothered me that Sam wouldn't help at all. I'm sure my in-laws would be happier if their own son took care of them instead of me, who isn't related by blood. Sam, can't you help with your parents? Why should I? They're your parents, not mine. Can't you at least be nice to them? I got stuck with a bad wife, and now I'm stuck with bad parents too. I just can't catch a break. I can't help but think my in-laws are the real losers for having a son like me. I still have a feeling that Sam might be cheating, but I can't leave because my in-laws are sick. If I go, Sam will probably neglect them. I don't want to stay married to him, but I can't ask for a divorce because I worry about my in-laws. Then Sam said he was going to Hawaii for Christmas with his friends. You're going to Hawaii for Christmas? Yeah, I'm not spending my holiday in this sad house. I need a break in sunny Hawaii. Don't you want to stay here and spend Christmas with your parents? No way. Who'd want to spend their vacation here? Who I go with is none of your business. Is it a woman? Shut up. Why do you care? You're just like last time, denying everything. He must be cheating again. I wasn't surprised to find out, but I was disappointed in Sam's attitude. He didn't seem sorry at all. It hurt to realize he didn't see me as his wife. I work hard every day. I don't need constant fun. But Sam, we're married. Shouldn't we at least have some basic respect for each other? I don't see it that way. You're just here to take care of my parents, like a maid. That's awful. If you feel that way, let's get a divorce. Don't bother me, especially since you have nowhere else to go. Just stay quiet and do your job. I don't want to stay married to him after this. I want to say I'm okay with divorcing him and leave. I can handle it on my own. But now that my in-laws are both bedridden, I can't leave them. But taking care of them is hard, and I don't know how we'll manage if I leave. Even if I put them in a care facility, I don't know if they'll both get in right away, and it's expensive. Can their pensions cover it all? Even if I work, I don't know if I can earn enough. I have my own life to think about too. It's all really worrying. But after everything, I can't stay with my husband anymore. You're worried about Sam, right? Yes, it seems we raised our son wrong. I'm sorry for what he's done to you. You don't have to worry about us. Do what you need to do. That's right, Chloe. You should be free. But I can't just leave. I can't leave everything to Sam. My in-laws care about me so much, even more than their own health. Their words touch my heart, and I feel even more determined not to leave them. And while I stay quiet, my husband talks about his affair like it's no big deal. I'm going out with her again. I'll be back late. Huh? It's better to have dinner with her than look at my face, right? But you know I'm cheating, and you still won't leave. So you've basically accepted it, right? It's like you approve of the affair, but nobody has given approval. Staying here means you have. You're just holding on to me because you can't survive on your own. It's really pathetic that I can't even say anything back to my husband who says such hurtful things. I cry in frustration, but when my husband sees my tears, he just laughs even more. It's heartbreaking to see him like this. What am I doing? My in-laws keep apologizing to me for their son's behavior, but it's also painful to see them like that. Maybe it would be better if I wasn't here. Maybe because I'm here, my husband relies on me too much regarding his parents. But even if I feel that way, if my husband doesn't change, I'll regret leaving forever. There's no guarantee he'll change. Then the day before Christmas Eve, my husband brought up divorce. I want a divorce. I prefer younger women. Huh? But you can stay here as a housekeeper, meaning things will stay the same. You'll live here for free, so think of it as your salary. With that, he put a signed divorce form in front of me. I understand. Of course, I won't become a housekeeper, as he suggests. But I also don't want to be his wife anymore. There's a limit to how much you can disrespect someone. I'm sure my husband knows I could leave his parents. That's why he can say these things so boldly. Knowing that makes me even more angry and frustrated. Well, take good care of them, okay? The next morning, my husband left happily for his trip to Hawaii. Even if I left him, I wanted to stay with my in-laws, but it wasn't that simple. I had to let Christmas pass without him. But without him, the day was peaceful, with no complaints. The three of us enjoyed Christmas dinner together, laughing while watching TV. Even though I knew I had to think about the future, I wished this peaceful time could last forever. And then, from the TV, I heard the Christmas song start. "Merry Christmas, I'm used to." Suddenly, my father-in-law sat up in bed. "All right, let's get going, dear." "Okay," my mother-in-law replied as she quickly stood up. "What's going on?" "Merry Christmas, Chloe." "Merry Christmas." "Merry Christmas, but is your back okay? How are you feeling?" When I asked, they looked at each other and smiled. Then my dad gave me surprising news. On December 30th, my husband Sam came back from his trip. He called me sounding panicked. "Hey, what's going on? Where are you? I can't reach Mom or Dad." "Well, your parents have been busy with Christmas stuff, so they're resting." "Where did you take them? Did you kidnap them?" "No way. They decided to go on their own. They were supposed to be unable to move. You took them without asking? They can move around just fine on their own." "What?" As soon as the Christmas song started, my in-laws stood up. Seeing my shocked face, my father-in-law said, "It's time for a fresh start," and laughed. Turns out his back pain had healed, and my mother-in-law had gotten better over the last 6 months. But because of Sam's mean words, my father-in-law made a plan. He told my mother-in-law about it, and she agreed. Since Sam got a job at a big company after college, he became more arrogant. He'd often stay out late, but they weren't too worried because he was single. When he married me, his parents hoped he'd settle down. But 2 years ago, when his mom got sick, he didn't take care of her and cheated on me. He acted sorry, but his dad sensed something wasn't right. As his dad's retirement neared, Sam started talking about the pension, showing his greed. They knew he was being fake just to get the money. But when Sam found out there was no pension, he showed his true colors. This confirmed his father-in-law's suspicions. Actually, his dad got more pension, but he didn't tell Sam because he knew Sam wanted it. If Sam had been nice to his mom and me, they would have shared the money with him, even without the pension. "It's sad it didn't happen that way," said his father-in-law sadly. When he fell and hurt his back, Sam said, "If you're bedridden now, you'll just be a burden." That made his dad stop seeing Sam as his son. So the parents decided to act like they were bedridden and make plans. He said sorry for causing me trouble. During that time, I noticed a "for sale" sign on our house. Why was it there? The meaning was pretty clear. Don't waste time. Our house was put up for sale. We moved out. What? I didn't know anything about this. Exactly. I don't want to live with you anymore, so I didn't tell you. My father-in-law bought a new house with his savings. The old house was supposed to be sold by a real estate agent, and we were supposed to leave by Christmas. But since we weren't going anywhere, we waited until yesterday when Sam left for his trip. It was funny how my father-in-law joked about moving when the Christmas songs played, but it felt like a new beginning for me too. All I had left to do was pack my stuff, which was easy. The movers were already booked, and everything was moved out by the 28th. "Dad, did Sam get enough money from the pensions?" "He didn't tell you because he wanted it all for himself." "What about the money from selling the house?" "I'm his son, so I should get a share. It's my right. Your dad is still alive, so it's not inheritance, right? But you know he's determined to spend all his money before he dies, so you won't get anything. He's still my dad. He doesn't want to be your dad anymore." "Oh, and don't worry. I've already started divorce proceedings. But he bought a new house. When Dad dies, it'll be mine." "Oh, the house my father-in-law kindly put in my name. There might be gift tax, but I think I can handle it with the property I'll get from you." "What?" This was the second time I caught my husband cheating, and he dumped all of his parents' care on me while he kept abusing me daily. I've been a homemaker for 5 years. With everything considered, I was told I'd get a fair share of our property. My father-in-law already talked to a lawyer about it. Your things are in storage, though there wasn't much. The lawyer has the key and will contact you later. Where am I supposed to go now? I don't know. Figure it out. That's not helpful. I told my girlfriend I'd be living in a nice house with a maid. Without a house or you, I'll look bad. I couldn't believe he said that to me. It reminded me he only thinks about himself. I didn't even want to talk anymore, so I hung up. Maybe you can do wrong without getting caught. My ex-husband's boss saw him in Hawaii during a work trip and found out. His company has strict rules, so he got demoted and a big pay cut. After my lawyer contacted the woman my ex-husband was seeing, she disappeared. Sadly, my ex-husband keeps asking to get back together, but I won't agree to that. Now he's struggling to pay his bills because he spent a lot on his mistress. He begged my lawyer to reunite us, crying about his problems, but the lawyer said no. Then my father-in-law recorded my ex's verbal abuse, and the lawyer was upset, saying it wasn't okay. So it's no surprise my father-in-law bought an old house with good air. I'm planning to turn it into a cozy cafe. We discuss ideas every day, trying to make it work. I don't know if it'll succeed, but I'm giving it my all.
How many times do you think I've called you? If you can hear me, at least respond. Ignoring your parents is disrespectful. Get out.
Scott was yelling at his stepson, Tyler, who's partially deaf. What are you doing? Stop it! I couldn't help but intervene, holding Tyler as he sobbed and stared down. Even when I asked what happened, Tyler just trembled and said nothing. Something was wrong. Believing so, I said, I'll take care of him for now, and took Tyler home. My name is Kate. I used to work as a craftsman at the U.S. branch of a globally renowned Swiss watchmaker. Due to deteriorating eyesight and back pain, making long hours of seated work difficult, I retired from the front lines of craftsmanship upon reaching retirement age. Thankfully, I was asked,
We definitely want you to continue working with us even after retirement. It would be a shame to see you go with your talents.
Now I work as a trainer, teaching young watchmakers. I believe I have led a good life. I'm grateful not only for having found a job I can immerse myself in, but also for the good relationships and my lovely daughter, Christina, I formed there. When I was fully occupied with motherhood, the image of a working mother wasn't common. Yet both my company and my husband supported me generously. Christina was an easy child, seldom fussy or prone to tantrums. Christina eventually became independent, married a college sweetheart, and lightened my burden. Later, she gave birth to a son named Tyler. To me, Tyler is my grandson, a wonderfully uncomplicated and adorable child. Both Christina and Ben, as well as my husband Robert and I, showered him with love. My life seemed to be progressing smoothly, but of course, not everything continued so perfectly. The first incident occurred when Tyler was still a toddler, developing a middle ear infection that led to permanent partial deafness as a complication. It was heartbreaking that a child so young had to endure such a disability, but what concerned me even more was Christina's reaction to the news. Christina was terribly distraught, and when I went to check on her, she spent days crying while watching Tyler play with a toy car. At that time, Ben was still alive, busy with work but firmly supporting Christina. Eventually, Christina regained her composure and returned to her normal state. Later, she lived peacefully with Ben and Tyler. They looked like a happy couple and family to anyone observing. However, everything changed after Ben suddenly died of a stroke. Losing her beloved husband, Christina seemed deeply shocked. At first, she coped, but after Ben's memorial service, she began to act strangely. She was no longer capable of handling household chores or daily tasks. When I visited, the house was a mess, and the kitchen was piled with dirty dishes of unknown origin. Christina was either wrapped in a blanket, staring blankly, or crying as if suddenly remembering something. In such a state, she obviously couldn't care for Tyler properly. When I visited, Tyler hadn't bathed for days and had only been eating snack bread. Christina had become like a large child herself. Worried about both Christina and Tyler, I visited Christina's house frequently, despite Robert telling me I was being overprotective. Eventually, Christina recovered from her mental depression, but then began to immerse herself in work as if escaping from reality. Having lost her husband, who was mainly providing for the family, Christina felt a pressing need to earn money and fill in as a father for Tyler. Although I was glad she had recovered, the balance between work and parenting was clearly off, so I continued to worry about them. While working, I visited Christina and Tyler, looking after Tyler and sometimes cooking his dinner to cover for Christina working late. Over time, Christina came to rely on me more, increasingly neglecting her home. One day I waited for Christina to return and sternly reprimanded her. "You're neglecting your role as a mother right now. I understand you're desperately trying to replace Ben, but consider Tyler's feelings too. He's lonely without a father." I spoke harshly, but it was true. Christina broke down crying, saying, "It's hard to look at Tyler because he resembles Ben so much. I'm scared that it's my fault he became partially deaf." "I understand your pain, but please, just pay a little more attention to Tyler." I said this, comforting Christina with a hug. A few months later, just after Tyler's 9th birthday, a change occurred in Christina's life when she met Scott Hansen. Scott was a young entrepreneur who had founded the online store GoGo Shopping, and he was seriously dating Christina, a single mother. When Christina confided to me that she was considering remarriage with Scott, I was pleased, thinking this could help her take a new step forward, possibly caring more for her home life. Most delightfully, Scott seemed to genuinely care for Tyler. At a joint family dinner, Tyler seemed to have taken a liking to Scott. They played together, looking very much like a real father and son. Soon after, they held a wedding. Tyler, holding hands with Christina and Scott, shyly walked down the aisle. They looked like a holy family, radiant and hopeful. I silently prayed for them to find happiness, also for Ben's sake. However, I would soon realize that this happiness was an illusion. A few months after the wedding, I approached Christina's house with a joyous heart, carrying a secretly made gift, a watch. I had crafted watches of the same design in different colors, each fitting Scott, Christina, and Tyler to commemorate their becoming a family. With a mix of anticipation and slight nervousness, I rang the bell, but there was no response. Could they not hear it? I wondered, using my key to enter. Then an unbelievable scene unfolded before me. The house was as neglected as shortly after Ben's death, but that wasn't all. In the middle of the cluttered floor, Tyler was sobbing terribly. Scott stood over him, commanding, while Christina pretended nothing was wrong. They hadn't noticed me yet. I reflexively held my breath and watched from the shadows.
"How many times do you think I've called you? If you can hear me, at least respond. Ignoring your parents is disrespectful. Get out."
Scott was in a fury, yelling at Tyler. Unable to stand it anymore, I opened the door and rushed to Tyler, embracing him as he sobbed, and looked up at Scott. "What are you doing? Stop it!" Scott glared back, eyes narrowed. Without a word, Christina dropped a bombshell. "It's part of his education. Scott isn't doing anything wrong." "What do you mean?" No matter how much I pressed, Christina only insisted. "It's Tyler's fault for ignoring Scott." "That can't be right. No matter the reason, it's wrong to yell at a child like that." Then, from my arms, Tyler said, "It's not like that, Grandma." His voice shook with tears. "It's my fault. I'm a bad kid." "Listen, Tyler, Grandma knows you're not a bad kid. If something's wrong, you can tell me. I'll listen." Even as I spoke gently, perhaps out of fear of Scott, Tyler only shook his head vehemently. He almost spoke up once, but stopped under Scott's piercing gaze. Frozen, he clung tightly to my arm, trembling. Something was very wrong. More than just being yelled at, I suspected he might also be suffering physical abuse. Convinced, I declared, "I'll be taking care of him for now," and lifted Tyler in my arms.
"Hey, what do you think you're doing, you old hag?"
As Scott moved to grab me, Christina held him back, saying, "Let it be." They exchanged a meaningful look. Sensing something sinister but prioritizing Tyler's safety over a confrontation, I left Christina's house. During the ride home, Tyler cried silently. When I asked if he had eaten dinner, he didn't respond. Realizing he might not hear me from the driver's side to his impaired right ear, a dark cloud of worry formed in my heart. Praying my suspicion was unfounded, I drove on silently. At home, I first bathed Tyler in a warm tub. Meanwhile, Robert and I prepared dinner. After his bath, Tyler wore one of Robert's jackets as pajamas, which was far too large for him. During dinner, after a long conversation, Tyler gradually began to share what had happened. Scott had been kind at first, but changed once they started living together. The trouble began when Tyler couldn't bring himself to call Scott Dad. Since then, Scott has taken every opportunity to be harsh. One time when Tyler didn't respond because he couldn't hear, Scott exploded.
You can hear me. Answer me. Do you hate me that much?
It turned out Tyler couldn't hear because Scott had spoken to his impaired right ear, but Scott wouldn't accept that he could only hear from the other side. Since then, Scott had repeatedly spoken into his impaired ear and then scolded him for not responding. Scott had wanted a relationship like lovers with Christina, wishing for a life mostly with her, sidelining Tyler. Recently, both Scott and Christina had treated Tyler as an inconvenience, often leaving him alone to go drinking late into the night, returning without even feeding him. It's a terrible story. The more I heard, the more pitiable Tyler seemed, and I was heartbroken. Accepting that my own daughter could do such things was difficult, but I couldn't believe Tyler was lying. There seemed to be no way to defend her actions. That night after Tyler had fallen asleep, I called Christina. I wanted to hear from her whether what Tyler had said was true. Christina readily admitted everything. She confessed to the harsh treatment Scott had given Tyler, her own willful ignorance of it, and their nights out leaving Tyler alone. If that's the case, I can't send Tyler back to you. I'll raise him at my place. If you two can live your lives, you'll be happy too. Though my words were tingered with sarcasm, Christina simply nodded and fell silent. Wanting to scold her for lacking maternal affection and responsibility, I held back as I sensed Tyler waking. I ended the call. The next morning, I talked to Tyler. You can stay with Grandma if you want. I'm worried about sending you back, so it would comfort me if you stayed. Tyler immediately nodded. Surprised by his quick response, I asked, Are you sure? You might not see your mom or Scott again.
That's okay. Mom and Uncle Scott probably hate me.
His words pained my heart. Tyler never returned to Christina's house after packing his things. Robert and I decided to formally adopt him. From then on, our days were peaceful and lively. Now retired, Robert cooked daily, his newfound cooking skills not perfect, but always delicious and comforting. Tyler and I cooked together on his days off, and we went fishing and camping on holidays. Despite the abrupt change in his initial tension, Tyler's face grew calmer day by day, and he began to smile more. Then one day, I received a transfer order from the Swiss headquarters. It was a promotion with a salary increase, and considering Tyler's future, it wasn't a bad option. Thus, the three of us moved to Switzerland. In Switzerland, Tyler started attending after-school sign language and IT classes with other children who are hard of hearing. Although everyone struggled with the unfamiliar French at first, Tyler quickly mastered it and became the most fluent speaker among us. I had always thought of Tyler as a quiet child, but that was only because he had been suppressed in that previous home. In reality, he was talkative and cheerful, a side of him I was delighted to discover. After moving to Switzerland, Tyler became decidedly more proactive. It wasn't so much a change as a return to his true self. He also developed an interest in watches and began visiting my workplace frequently. Initially, he wouldn't stray far from me, but gradually he started to approach other craftsmen and watched their techniques intently. Tyler, affectionately called Ty by everyone, was adored and doted on by all. A decade passed, and Tyler grew from a little boy into a fine young man. He became involved in the development of next-generation hearing aids, and his achievements were even featured in international journals. His hearing aid caught the attention of American companies, leading to a partnership. As Tyler flourished, I began to feel the effects of aging, making work increasingly difficult. With Tyler's career path secure and considering my retirement, we decided it was time to return to the U.S. Fortunately, Tyler's hearing aids were highly acclaimed. They not only provided clear hearing, but also blocked ambient noise and amplified voices from the directions the wearer was looking, which drew widespread praise. As one of the developers, Tyler was invited for a live TV interview. Proudly, he stated,
This device was inspired by my mother's craftsmanship in watchmaking, combined with IT. It wouldn't have been possible without the artisans who inspired its development and the parents who enveloped me with their warm love. I am truly grateful.
Tyler was now more proficient in French than English, so he spoke through an interpreter. Hearing his words on TV filled my heart to the brim, and Robert's eyes welled up with tears as he watched. However, the TV interview took an unexpected turn when Christina and Scott suddenly appeared on the scene. Faking being involved parents, they showed emotional support by holding Tyler's hand.
Tyler, it's so nice to see you at last. Let's head home together with me, your dad.
You've done so well, Tyler. They acted as if it was a touching reunion of a long-separated family. Watching anxiously, Tyler asked for the interpreter's help and said without changing his expression,
Hello. You're the ones who abandoned me. It's been 10 years, hasn't it? How's go-go shopping doing these days?
The couple's faces froze. Tyler, about the hearing aids, your dad's site could exclusively sell them. She tried to salvage the situation, but Tyler continued in French, deliberately maintaining a formal distance.
Unfortunately, this product is tied up in a project to be distributed free of charge to hearing-impaired children, thanks to donation from kind-hearted people. I can't give it to the parents who abandoned me. Besides, my parents are Kate and Robert, not you two.
But look, this watch. Isn't it the matching one, right?
Right, Tyler? Remember?
They showed him a luxury watch I had given him. Tyler slowly shook his head.
That watch doesn't match mine.
Saying so, Tyler pulled a pendant from his neck. The watch was one I had completely rebuilt after he came to our home, changing all parts so he wouldn't remember them. Tyler had realized this later and had always kept it close, wearing it as a pendant when it no longer fit his wrist.
I've never thought of you as my parents. Could you please not talk to me anymore?
His firm declaration and the interpreter, initially translating hesitantly, began to speak louder as the story unfolded. Overwhelmed, Christina and Scott awkwardly disappeared from the screen. Following the interview, Go-Go Shopping was flooded with criticism and complaints, leading to its rapid closure. The interview catapulted Tyler to fame as a young man who overcame adversity to achieve success. He received numerous job offers from both domestic and international sources. Now he runs his own company, tirelessly working for children with hearing impairments. Busy as a global entrepreneur, Tyler still wears the small watch I made, shining around his neck. Back in the US, Robert and I live a relaxed life, always looking forward to Tyler's visits, bringing gifts from his travels.
10 days after my husband passed away, my eldest son, John, and his wife, Catherine, came to visit me. So, you're going to be living on a pension from now on, right? How much do you get each month? John asked bluntly. I answered honestly, just $6.50. They exchanged glances and then snickered. Wow, how do you plan on surviving on that? And just so you know, don't expect any help from us. We're not taking care of you, Catherine said with a smirk. Yeah, don't count on us. In fact, let's just cut ties right now, John added, laughing. At that moment, I reached my breaking point. I couldn't take it anymore. I had raised John all wrong. Finally, I calmly said, That's fine, but don't come back regretting it. Catherine laughed even louder. Regret it? Who would regret cutting ties with a poor old hag like you? And so, I cut ties with John and Catherine. But a month later, they would be shaking with fear and regret. My name is Emily Johnson. I'm a 66-year-old housewife. 40 years ago, I married my husband, Tom, who was 2 years older than me. Tom was a sincere and compassionate man who always took care of me. I've been a homemaker, supporting Tom in his small business. Even now, we still live together, though Tom continues to work. Tom and I have 2 children. Our eldest, John, is now 38 years old. John was always restless and rough as a child. He grew up to be something of a bully. And there were more than a few times when Tom and I had to apologize to other parents for his behavior. John struggled with school and barely managed to graduate from a local technical high school. After that, he quickly quit the construction company where he first got a job. He's never been able to hold down a job for long and has jumped from one to another well into his late 30s. He lives on his own, but the only time he comes to see us is when he needs money. I quit my job again, so could you help me out a little? He would say, always making us give him money. There was even a time when we paid off his debts after he came to us in tears. But despite that, he kept coming back to us for money, and it troubled us greatly. His younger brother, Robert, who is now 35, was a different story. He was quiet, serious, and did well in school. We had a hard time with John, but Robert never caused any problems. He had a smooth school life. John would often mock Robert, calling him a goody two-shoes. And sometimes he even bullied him. Whenever that happened, we scolded John. But I swear, Tom and I never played favorites. We loved both of our children equally. Robert grew up to be a kind and capable person. He graduated from a national university and got a job at the local government office. When he was 27, he introduced us to the woman he wanted to marry, a colleague from work. Mom, Dad, this is Mary. I'm planning to marry her, Robert said. Standing next to him was a lovely woman with a short haircut and a bright smile. Tom and I were thrilled and gave our full support to their marriage. Robert and Mary registered their marriage and moved into an apartment about 30 minutes away from our home. They would visit us occasionally, always bringing gifts and showing concern for us in our old age. Robert and Mary were very dear to us. Then, one day, out of the blue, I got a call from John. Hello? John? What's going on? I asked, a little excited to hear from him after so long. I'm getting married, so I'll bring her over next Sunday. He said abruptly, and then hung up before I could say anything else. What did John say? Tom asked. He said he's getting married and bringing her over, I replied, equally surprised. We contacted Robert to prepare for meeting John's fiancée. On the Sunday John mentioned, the doorbell rang, and when I answered, there stood John, whom I hadn't seen in nearly a year, with a flashy young woman with long, dyed brown hair by his side. Hi there. I'm Catherine, she greeted us casually. She looked to be in her late 20s. I invited them in and led them to the living room where Tom and Robert's family were waiting. Hey, Robert, you're here too, huh? You're still as plain as ever, John remarked when he saw Robert, who frowned slightly. While it was rather unusual for someone in their late 30s to be sporting dyed hair and flashy clothes like John, it wasn't the right atmosphere to point that out. Well, like I said, I'm getting married to her, John said, nodding toward Catherine with his chin. Is that so? And, Catherine, was it? How did you two meet? Tom asked. To which Catherine responded, I used to work at a girls' bar, and John was one of the regulars. Ah, a meeting at a place like that. Typical of John, I thought. Well, I kinda knocked her up, so we gotta get married. John casually dropped the bombshell, causing my eyes to widen. Knocked her up. Catherine, you're pregnant? I asked in shock. Yeah, I'm 3 months along now, she answered cheerfully. And what do your parents think about this? Tom asked cautiously. Oh, I'm not in contact with my parents. We're estranged, so I'm not planning on telling them about the pregnancy or the marriage," Catherine replied nonchalantly. Tom and I were left speechless. But given the situation, it was clear that John had to take responsibility. "If that's the case, you should get married as soon as possible," Tom advised, and John and Catherine nodded in agreement. However, the next moment, Catherine said something shocking. "I want to have a wedding too, so you guys can cover the costs." Tom and I both blurted out, "What? A wedding? You want to have one?" I asked, surprised. "Of course. A wedding is every girl's dream. I've already booked a venue for next month before I get too big," Catherine said, now dropping any formality. "Having a wedding is your decision, but you should cover the costs yourselves." "That's what Robert and Mary did," Tom stated firmly. "When Robert and Mary got married, we didn't offer much financial help beyond giving them $5,000 as a wedding gift. It was only fair to do the same for John." But upon hearing this, Catherine flew into a rage. "What are you talking about? The groom's parents are supposed to pay for the wedding. We don't have any savings," she shouted. "If you don't have any savings, then all the more reason to start saving for the baby," I suggested, but Catherine started crying. "That's so cruel. You won't even let me have my dream wedding. What if the stress harms the baby?" At that point, as the parents of the man who got her pregnant, we couldn't argue back. Catherine's always dreamed of having a wedding. "You'll cover the costs, right?" John demanded, and Tom and I reluctantly nodded. Shortly after that, John and Catherine registered their marriage. And the following month, they held the wedding. Even though it wasn't well attended due to their lack of friends, the wedding still cost nearly $30,000. Tom and I had planned to cover whatever the guests' gifts didn't. But after the ceremony, John told us, "We're using the gifts for the honeymoon, so you guys can pay the entire cost of the wedding." In the end, we ended up spending $30,000 for John and Catherine's wedding. When I apologized to Robert for the unfairness of it all, he said, "Don't worry about it, but for your own sake, you shouldn't spoil John too much." I could only nod in agreement with Robert's words. After their marriage, John and Catherine moved into an apartment about an hour away from us. We didn't have much contact with them, but about a month after their wedding, my father, who lived far away, passed away. He had been in the hospital for a long time, so I was somewhat prepared. But I still cried when I called John. "John, your grandpa passed away. Will you come to the funeral? He was very fond of you." John responded with annoyance in his voice, "Huh? The funeral? You expect me to go to another prefecture for that? No thanks." "What? I haven't seen Grandpa in years, so I don't care. I'm not going." "Deal with it," John said before hanging up. I couldn't push him further, so we held the funeral with just Tom, Robert, and Mary. They all helped me, and we managed to get through the funeral together. About 6 months after my father passed away, John and Catherine had a baby boy and named him Noah. John brought Catherine and Noah to visit us. The newborn was adorable, and I asked Catherine, "Catherine, may I hold Noah?" Catherine twisted her face and replied, "Huh? No way." I quickly withdrew my outstretched hand, feeling embarrassed. I could understand that there are stressful times after giving birth. But it still hurts that I wasn't allowed to hold my own grandchild. "Hey, we just had a baby, so how about giving us a nice gift?" John said with a grin, holding out his hand to us. After receiving money from Tom and Robert, He immediately opened it in front of us. "Come on, don't you think this is a little short?" John said, looking dissatisfied. Robert, unable to hold back any longer, spoke up. "John, opening the gift right in front of us isn't really appropriate." John glared at Robert and shot back. "Shut up. Maybe you're just jealous because you and Mary have been married for years. And still don't have kids? Sorry we beat you to it. What, are you guys infertile or something? How sad." In reality, Robert and Mary had been married for over 5 years without being blessed with children. Mary had confided in me before, tearfully admitting that they were undergoing fertility treatments. Now, she looked on the verge of tears again, and Catherine, noticing this, laughed. "Oh, so you guys are infertile? Bummer. Babies are so cute, you know?" Mary couldn't take it any longer and left the room, with Robert quickly following after her. "John, Catherine, stop speaking to Robert and Mary like that," I said firmly. Catherine responded with a sharp tongue. "Shut up, old hag." I couldn't help but snap, "What did you just say?" But John and Catherine only smirked and walked out. After that, I made sure to keep Robert and Mary as far away from John and Catherine as possible. Not that John and Catherine ever reached out to us unless they wanted something. Tom and I also decided to distance ourselves from them. However, not long after, Tom fell ill and a hospital checkup revealed a malignant tumor. The doctor told us that he had about 6 months left. I was devastated and lost control, but Robert and Mary were there to support me. "Mom, it's going to be okay. We're here for you," Mary said, crying along with me, and it comforted me a little. After I calmed down, I called John to inform him of Tom's condition and prognosis. "Oh, so Dad's going to the other side soon, huh? Well, good luck with that," John said dismissively and didn't even bother visiting Tom. It was just me, Robert, and Mary who visited the hospital regularly, doing our best to support Tom's treatment. But Tom only got weaker. I called John again, pleading with him. "John, please, your father doesn't have much time left. Please come see him. Even just seeing his grandchild might lift his spirits. Why should I bother? It's a hassle. Just let me know when he kicks the bucket." John replied, and he never visited Tom while I was there. 4 months after being admitted, Tom called me to his bedside and told me something that shocked me. But I nodded firmly. Less than 2 weeks later, Tom passed away. "Please, open your eyes," I cried, clinging to Tom's lifeless body. Robert and Mary comforted me, rubbing my back as they cried alongside me. But I couldn't mourn forever. I had to carry out Tom's funeral as the chief mourner. Exhausted, I relied on Robert and Mary to handle most of the arrangements. Tom's funeral was well attended by many people from his work, and it turned out to be a fitting ceremony for him. John and Catherine showed up but spent most of the time looking bored and fiddling with their phones. 10 days after the funeral, as I sat alone in the now quiet house, John and Catherine suddenly appeared without any notice. "John, you came. I'm glad because I've been feeling so lonely." "We're not here for that. The first week after the funeral is over. So it's time to talk about the inheritance, don't you think?" John said bluntly. I was shocked. It's true that we would have to discuss it eventually, but I hadn't expected him to bring it up so soon. However, something else caught my attention. "Where's Noah? He's still so small, you can't leave him alone." Catherine casually replied, "Oh, we gave him up for adoption." "What?" I gasped in disbelief. "Adoption? What did she mean?" "Yeah, raising a kid was way harder than we thought. So we got in touch with my estranged family and asked if they could take him. My much older sister decided to take him in. Honestly, it's a relief. It was such a hassle." I felt dizzy hearing Catherine speak so nonchalantly. Had John and Catherine really abandoned their responsibilities as parents? Anyway, let's talk about the inheritance. How much did Dad leave behind? He ran a business, so there must be a decent amount. How much do we get? John pressed me for answers. I replied quietly, "It's about $80,000. John and Catherine both looked stunned. $80,000. Is that really all? That's so little. Catherine exclaimed. Things haven't been going well with the business these past few years. $80,000 is all there is, I explained truthfully. John grimaced but continued, "Well, that's less than I expected, but whatever. We should get at least $20,000, right?" He was referring to his legal share of the inheritance. By law, the spouse gets half, and the remaining half is divided equally among the children. Well, your father's will is still to be processed, and there are legal procedures to go through. So I can't give you anything right now. Just make sure it happens soon, okay? Seriously, though, this inheritance is way too small. In a time when people say you need at least $200,000 for retirement in addition to pension, you're only left with $40,000? That's sad. As I remained silent, John spoke up. Well, yeah. Mom was a housewife, after all. I guess you'll be living off your pension now, right? How much do you get each month? I answered honestly, $650. They exchanged glances. Wow, how do you plan on surviving on that? Just so you know, don't expect us to help. We're not taking care of anyone else's problems. Yeah, don't count on us. In fact, let's cut ties right now. At that moment, I reached my breaking point. I couldn't take it anymore. I had clearly failed in raising John. Slowly, I spoke to them. Fine, but don't come back regretting it. Catherine laughed loudly. Regret it? Who's going to regret cutting ties with a poor old hag like you? All right then, let's consider ourselves estranged. Yeah, but make sure Dad's inheritance gets transferred properly, okay? Then we'll be done with you. I didn't say anything in response as I watched them walk away. A month passed. I was with Robert and Mary, taking care of some business. And we were just leaving when, by chance, we ran into John and Catherine. Hey, what are you guys doing here? John asked. Isn't this a luxury home builder's office? What were you doing here? Catherine added. Robert replied. We were just meeting with them because we've decided to build a house. John looked surprised. A house? But then he quickly added. Well, I guess it makes sense since you're both government workers. But what's Mom doing here? Mary responded, We've decided to live with Mom. John and Catherine exchanged glances before bursting out laughing. Living together? With this penniless old hag? Wow, that's some serious dedication. But since we've cut ties, she's all yours to deal with. Neither Robert, Mary, nor I said anything. Catherine, still laughing, turned to Robert and Mary. So, you guys are infertile, can't have kids, and now you're going to live with this old hag? spending all that money on a house just to have her around? How sad. Robert replied calmly, well, we're not actually paying for the house. What? What do you mean? Aren't you building the house? John asked, confused. Mary glanced at me before speaking. We were planning to, but then Mom. Mom? What do you mean? John pressed. Finally, I spoke up. I'm the one building the house. It's a custom two-family home. And I paid $600,000 up front. John and Catherine's eyes widened. What? That makes no sense. How could you afford a $600,000 house on your pension and with such a small inheritance? Well, I have the money. It's only natural to do this for Robert and Mary since they offered to live with me so I wouldn't be lonely. John furrowed his brow. That still doesn't make sense. Don't lie, old hag. John's raised voice attracted the attention of passers-by. Well, there's no need to explain everything to you since we're estranged. Robert, Mary, let's go. With that, Robert, Mary, and I headed toward our car in the parking lot. Just as we were about to get in, Catherine yelled at Robert. Wait a minute. Is this car yours? It's a luxury foreign car. Didn't you have a regular domestic car until recently? Robert glanced at me, and I nodded. Yeah, Mom bought it for us. John and Catherine looked stunned. Since I don't drive, I figured I'd rely on Robert and Mary, so I bought the car. If they're going to drive it, I wanted them to have something nice. Catherine grabbed John's shoulder. This is weird. Even for a government worker couple? They couldn't afford a house and a car like this all at once. John still seemed confused, but he shouted at me. Explain yourself, old hag. I sighed and, from inside the car, replied to John. If you want to know more, come to the house. We're heading there now anyway. Then I told Robert, let's go, and the car smoothly pulled away. As we drove off, I glanced back and saw John and Catherine standing there, dumbfounded. About 40 minutes after we arrived home, John and Catherine showed up, out of breath. Robert, Mary, and I were enjoying tea, but we paused when they barged in. Hey, explain what's going on. You bought them a house and a car? There's no way you could afford that. I sighed again and set my teacup down on the table. All right, fine. Have a seat, and I'll explain. They sat down on the sofa, their eyes fixed on me. Do you remember that my father, your grandfather, passed away recently? You didn't even attend the funeral. What's your point? He was just an old farmer living in the countryside. My father was a landowner. What? John and Catherine said in unison. A landowner. But he was always working in the fields, covered in dirt. Sure, my father did farming, but that was more of a free-time leisure. In reality, he owned prime real estate buildings and apartments that generated passive income. He believed in the value of hard work, and that's something I admired about him. So, what are you saying? Your father was rich? John asked, his voice tinged with disbelief. Actually, about 10 years ago, I received a lifetime gift from him. And I've been living off rental income ever since. That allowed Tom to use his money for the business. And I knew we'd be fine in our retirement even without his money. John and Catherine were left speechless. I continued. When my father passed away recently, I inherited all his assets as his only daughter. Buying a house and a car for Robert and Mary didn't even make a dent. Why didn't you tell us about this? Did Robert know? John demanded, looking bewildered. Robert shook his head. No. We only found out when we suggested living together. Why didn't you tell us something this important? That's not fair, John exclaimed, growing agitated. I calmly replied, my father believed that children should live their own lives. Tom and I shared that belief. Besides, I knew if you found out about the money, you'd try to drain every last bit of it. A heavy silence followed as I sipped my tea. Suddenly, Catherine lost her composure. So, what does that mean? You're rich now because of your father's inheritance? How much money do you have? I smiled. I won't go into specifics, but it's around $10 million. And the rental income alone brings in hundreds of thousands a year. Catherine nearly collapsed in shock. Another silence followed before John, sweating nervously, spoke in a pleading tone. Mom, you're so secretive. How could you keep something like this from us? Yes, really, Emily, that's not fair. If we'd known, we never would have treated you that way, Catherine added, trying to sound conciliatory. As I remained silent, Mary quietly poured me another cup of tea. After taking a sip, I said, well, we've already cut ties, so my financial situation shouldn't concern you. John began to panic. Don't say that. Mom, why don't you buy us a house and a car too? It would be easy for you now, right? Catherine forced a strained smile and added, yes, you wouldn't just buy things for Robert and Mary and leave us out, would you? Why should I give money to a son and daughter-in-law I've cut ties with? I replied sharply. John and Catherine both looked like they were at a loss for words. Remember, I told you not to regret it. And you're not regretting anything, right? I said with a smile, watching as they began to tremble. They then desperately tried to undo the estrangement, using every word they could think of to persuade me. But I calmly refused, reminding them we're already estranged. Finally, John couldn't hold it in anymore and shouted, you stubborn old hag. Fine, we'll just wait until you kick the bucket. You can't have that much longer anyway. I remained unfazed. Is that so? I replied, my expression unchanged. Catherine, frustrated, snapped. Fine. Then at least transfer the $20,000 from Tom's inheritance to us right away. We'll let you off the hook today with that. But Robert calmly interjected. Actually, John, you're not entitled to any of Dad's inheritance. John sneered. What are you talking about? Do you think you can fool me? I know the law. There's something called a reserved portion of inheritance. As the biological son, I'm entitled to a share no matter what. He spoke with smug confidence, and Catherine nodded vigorously beside him. I calmly pulled out my phone and played an audio file. The room filled with the harsh, ugly voices of John and Catherine. Hey, old man. Tell us where you keep your bank books and the PIN numbers. You're going to kick the bucket soon anyway, so we'll make good use of your money. Just hand it over, or things will get ugly for you. John and Catherine's faces twisted with shock. This was recorded by my husband from his hospital bed. You both came to him while I wasn't around and treated him horribly, didn't you? I asked, my voice cold. John's voice faltered, so what? That has nothing to do with the inheritance. No, John, it does, Robert interjected. Dad left a will stating that, based on this evidence, he wanted you disinherited. John looked confused. Disinherited, he muttered. I decided to let Robert, who had a law degree, explain further. Disinheritance is a legal process where the deceased, in this case, Dad, can request that a specific heir be excluded from receiving any inheritance. If the court approves it, you won't even get your reserved portion. John and Catherine were visibly shaken, the blood draining from their faces. Dad left instructions to disinherit you based on the mistreatment he suffered and the fact that he had to cover your debts. The court proceedings have already started, and it's almost certain that you'll be disinherited. You won't receive a cent. This was what Tom had shared with me on his deathbed. John and Catherine were now pale with fear. Are you saying we won't even get the $20,000 from Dad? John stammered. Both Robert and I nodded. As John and Catherine stood in stunned silence, I continued. You know, even if you were disinherited, there's something called substitute inheritance, which would allow your son Noah to inherit your share. But since you gave Noah up for adoption, you can't touch that money. It will go to him instead. Catherine's eyes widened in panic. We never should have given Noah up for adoption. You had no right to be parents anyway. I've already informed your sister, who is now Noah's legal guardian, and the money will be transferred to her. Looks like your plan backfired. John and Catherine started to panic, turning on each other in frustration. I cut in before their argument could escalate further. By the way, I'm also planning to disinherit you during my lifetime. Even if that doesn't work, I'll be transferring my assets to Robert and Mary as gifts while I'm still alive. You won't get a single penny. John's face twisted in desperation as he suddenly fell to his knees. Mom, please. We spent all our money thinking we'd get Dad's inheritance. Now we're in debt. Please, help us out. Catherine, shaking, knelt beside him, pleading pitifully, please, we're begging you. I refuse. We're already estranged, remember? If you keep bothering me, I'll call the police. This is the last time we'll ever meet. Now get out. In the end, it was Robert who had to escort the crying, desperate couple out of the house. Later, the court recognized Tom's wish to disinherit John, and he was legally barred from receiving any of Tom's estate. The inheritance that would have gone to John was given to Noah's legal guardian, Catherine's sister, who, along with the rest of Catherine's family, was incredibly grateful. Despite John and Catherine's attempts to regain custody of Noah, her family refused to give him up. The situation escalated to a court battle, which John and Catherine lost. Catherine's family then cut ties with her again, promising to take good care of Noah. I keep in touch with them and plan to offer assistance if needed, as I want Noah, who is innocent in all this, to have a happy life. As for John and Catherine, they ended up deeply in debt from their reckless spending, and had to work around the clock to make ends meet. Eventually, the constant arguments over money led to their divorce. Catherine moved far away and returned to working nights. John now lives in a rundown apartment, working in a factory by day and as a traffic control guard by night to pay off his debts. While I hope they learn from their hardships and become better people, I'm not holding my breath. Regardless, it's no longer my concern. On the other hand, I've happily moved into the new two-family home with Robert and Mary. Mom, why don't you join us for dinner tonight? The grilled fish turned out really well, Mary called out one evening. Even though it's technically a completely separate two-family home, Robert and Mary still include me in their lives and continue to treat me with kindness, just as they always have. Sure, I'll bring over some potato salad. You need to eat well. Mary, especially for the baby, I replied with a smile. Yes, just a few months after we started living together. Mary's fertility treatments finally succeeded, and she's now expecting a baby. Robert, Mary, and I were overjoyed by the news. Robert smiled warmly at me, and Mary, with her growing belly, looked happier than ever. In just 3 more months, I'll get to meet my beautiful grandchild. And I'm looking forward to that day with all my heart. On a sunny spring day, I had an unexpected reunion. It was with my ex-husband, Ryan Baker, who had left me 20 years ago when I was ill, to marry a company president's mistress. He bragged to me, laughing heartily, "My daughter is not only beautiful like her mother, but she's also become a medical student. Isn't that amazing? It must be too enviable a story for an old maid like you, huh?" So, I told him. Oh, what a coincidence. My 20-year-old son is also in medical school. And I was wondering, what do you mean by that? Hearing this, my ex-husband screamed in a frenzy. My name is Sandra Gale. After graduating from junior college, I got a job in the accounting department of a general company. There, I met Ryan Baker, who worked in the sales department. Salespeople would submit their receipts along with their expenses every month. But Ryan was always late. Plus, there were always small errors. After several exchanges over these issues, we got to know each other better. Sandra, are these receipts okay for this month? Finally, they are complete. Other seniors always submit theirs on time. It's only Mr. Baker who always takes so much time. Well, because when I'm late, I get to talk to you. What? If you don't mind, let me treat you to dinner. I'm always causing you trouble. This was the beginning of us going out for meals and eventually starting to date. After dating for 2 years, we got married. Ryan seemed like the ideal husband, bright and kind. After we get married, I want 2 kids, a boy and a girl. Then, the 4 of us can live happily together. And I want you, Sandra, to focus on housework and childcare, so I'd like you to quit your job. With that, I too thought I would dedicate myself to housework and childcare once we had children. So I quit my job. The first year was fun as we planned our future life together. But as the year passed without any signs of pregnancy, the distance between us grew. Yet, I still thought our married life was just beginning. That's when I discovered my illness. When I was told I needed to be hospitalized long-term for treatment, I was shocked. But my husband seemed even more disturbed by the news. What? Ill? Are you okay? Yes, I need to be hospitalized for a while. Sorry for making you worry. I thought my husband was worried about me, and I tried to reassure him. Could it be that this illness is why we haven't been able to conceive? What? My husband's complexion changed as he accused me. I thought we could build the ideal family, but an illness. Did you marry me knowing you were ill? No, what are you talking about? This is the first time I've learned about my illness. Don't say such strange things. But, it's strange that you got sick right after getting married. Maybe you can't have children because of your illness? After such accusations, I was furious. Here I was, shocked by my illness, and he was accusing me of hiding it. I was speechless with the absurdity of it all, and seeing my reaction. My husband quickly retreated to the bedroom alone. I thought maybe he was just upset because of the sudden news. I too was quite shaken when I heard from the doctor. So I understood that it was hard to believe at first. Our interactions remained awkward, and a few days later I was hospitalized. I don't have many good memories. of my hospital stay because my husband never visited me. Initially, I thought he was busy with household chores since I wasn't there. But when a week passed without any word from him, I got worried and called him. Hey, you're off work today, right? Are you eating okay? Are you managing? Yeah, I'm fine. How about you? No prospect of discharge, right? Yes, sorry for not being able to do anything at home. Don't worry about me. I'm busy, so I don't think I can visit. Okay, take care of yourself then. Weeks passed since that phone call, and not once did my husband visit. He didn't even send a single email. I understood he was busy, but I still felt lonely. My only conversational companions for those weeks were doctors and nurses, with whom casual chats were not the same. Naturally, my mood began to sink. The mounting uncertainty about whether my illness would truly heal was overwhelming. Wanting to exchange even a few words with my husband, I decided to call him. It was evening, a time when he would usually be at home. After a few rings, he answered the phone. What do you want? His voice was cold over the phone. I was just wondering how you are. Hey, when is your next day off? Could you come visit me sometime? Why? My coming won't cure you, will it? Yes, but I'm lonely here by myself. Please, even just for a little while, I'd like to see you and talk. Just then, I heard a woman's voice behind him. Hey, who are you talking to? Oh, it's okay, I'll be done soon, he said to her. Wait, who? A colleague? Or, where are you? Who are you with? I couldn't help but press him in a demanding tone. Does it matter? It's none of your business. None of my business. Is it someone from work? Or could it be that you? A client. I'm busy right now, I'll call back later. With that, he abruptly ended the call. He never called back, nor did he visit. From that day on, I began to suspect his infidelity. Whenever I called during hours he should have been free, he wouldn't answer the phone, and he certainly never visited. My anxiety grew steadily. Then, a few weeks later, a letter arrived at the hospital. Inside was a divorce petition and a return envelope. I immediately called my husband, and surprisingly, he answered smoothly. Hey, what is this? A divorce petition. I inadvertently pressed him, forgetting it had been a while since we last spoke. Good, it arrived properly. To put it bluntly, please agree to the divorce. He stated flatly. Why? Because I'm sick? Or did you find someone else? I asked. It's both, obviously. I wanted to build the ideal family, but you turned out to be infertile and sick. We've only been married for a year, and you're already living in the hospital. I didn't marry you to take care of you, he explained. Indeed, I couldn't support my husband in my current state, I was more of a burden. But that didn't justify a sudden divorce. Unperturbed by my shock, he continued. Fortunately, I've met the ideal person. She's much healthier than you, and it looks like I can build the perfect family with her. So please, let's get divorced. Despite what he said, I couldn't accept it and quickly retorted. Wait a minute. What if I can get pregnant once I'm cured? Don't just abandon me because I'm sick. His response was unexpected. It's only natural to leave you. Even if your illness is cured, you might still be infertile. Instead of wasting resources on you, I want to be happy with someone with whom I can definitely start a new family. And she is already pregnant with my child. What? I was too shocked to speak. The child I couldn't have with you, I conceived immediately with her. It must be fate that she and I should be a couple, he said. So, you were cheating on me after all. Pfft, waiting forever for a sick woman is a waste of time. Who knows if you'll even get better? How could he say such things? He used to be kind when we were dating, but now not a trace of that kindness remained. He went on. Moreover, she is the daughter of a company president. She might not take over as president since she's the second daughter. But she can become an executive. So not only am I gaining a family, but I also have no worries about our future life. Isn't that great? The daughter of a president? Yes, his affair was with the daughter of a president. Yes, surely heaven has gifted me the perfect family. What was he talking about? Speaking as if heaven had granted him a present. Yet his sincerity was lacking from the moment he chose to cheat. Could such a person truly receive a gift from heaven? And does the woman you're with know you're married? Normally, daughters of presidents don't seem like the type to have affairs. What are you talking about? It's not an affair to her, and I didn't intend to cheat. We were both serious. It was just a matter of misaligned timing. Besides, you and I were practically separated anyway. Separated? I'm just hospitalized. But as a couple, we're finished, aren't we? You can't have children, you can't manage anything at home. You're just living comfortably in the hospital. Can someone like that even be called a wife? That's harsh. Consider yourself lucky I'm letting you off with a free divorce. I should be asking for compensation for ruining my life. Ruining your life? You don't have to put it like that. What are you talking about? If I hadn't met you, I wouldn't have had such a meaningless marriage. And I wouldn't have a mark on my family register. Just write the divorce papers properly. Then I'll file them. Faced with his words, I couldn't respond. Indeed, I had become sick soon after our marriage. Instead of supporting my husband, perhaps I had been a burden. And his affair already had a child, the child he had always wanted. Maybe I was just a nuisance to them. Thinking this over, it seemed best to agree to the divorce, and I said, okay. I never expected such a thing when we married. I thought I was building a happy family with the person I loved. How wrong I was, to be discarded so easily just because I got sick. In retrospect, I could have demanded compensation, but at that time, being worn down by a lengthy hospital stay, I agreed to the divorce too readily. Afterward, I was so shocked that I couldn't even eat. Was this how my life was going to end? Just then, I was saved by someone. 20 years later, in a villa in Long Island, I had an unexpected reunion. Who do I see here? Long time no see. The person greeting me was Ryan Baker, my ex-husband, who had left me 20 years earlier to have a child with his mistress. Oh, Mr. Baker? Long time no see. You look well. I thought you might have died out there, but here you are, alive. He said with a smirk. Such a terrible thing to say. Unfortunately for you, I'm still kicking. And these are your wife and daughter? Yes. Aren't they beautiful? My wife is a president's daughter, and my daughter is a beauty like her mother. Plus, she's a medical student. Impressive, right? Ryan boasted about his beautiful daughter beside him, who indeed had big eyes, a high nose, and a well-proportioned face, looking very much like her mother next to him. Well, good for you. Congratulations. As I said this, the wife, who wore heavy makeup giving her a cold impression, spoke to Ryan. And who is this? Oh, you've never met. She's my ex-wife. Ah, the one who couldn't have children because of her illness. Ryan's wife assessed me as if appraising an item. Huh? Couldn't have children? Was he telling people that? As I stood dumbfounded, Ryan dismissively said, "Yeah, that's her." Then their daughter, unable to wait any longer, said, "Dad, there's something I want to buy. If we don't hurry, it might sell out." "All right, I'll buy it for you. Go ahead to the store." "Okay. Mom, let's go together." Having said that, the daughter and wife quickly walked away. Watching the daughter's back, my ex-husband smirked and said, "How about that? Envious, aren't you? She's always nagging me to go shopping." "Oh, maybe that's too much for an old maid like you to hear, huh?" Thinking about how he became such a nasty person after marrying a company president's daughter made me realize that breaking up was indeed the right decision. Plus, I'm not an old maid. I decided to set the record straight. Really, children are wonderful, aren't they? They have their rebellious phases, but you still find them adorable, I said. What? What makes you think you understand? Are you delusional? At your age, you couldn't possibly have kids anymore, you were infertile to begin with. My ex-husband replied, bursting into laughter. His misunderstanding made me laugh. What are you talking about? You still think I'm infertile? Actually, I remarried, and I have 3 children. My eldest is already 20 years old, and coincidentally, he's also in medical school. They might even be at the same university. What? You have kids? That can't be right. A 20-year-old? Isn't that the same age as my child? That's impossible, we broke up 20 years ago. Oh, I see, they must be your partner's children from a previous relationship, right? That makes sense, you can't have kids because of your illness. Why do you insist I can't have children? True, the 20-year-old is my stepchild, but he is just as much my own. It was then that 2 children approached us, running over. Mom, where have you been? You said you were at the store. Why are you here? Sorry, I bumped into an acquaintance and got caught up. Did you have to look for me? I'm sorry. Watching me talk to the children, my ex-husband asked, Wait, your children? You said one was 20, didn't you? These kids look young. How old are they? I said my eldest child is 20. These 2 are 14 and 12. I told you, I have 3 children. The eldest isn't at an age to go shopping with us anymore. Hearing this, my ex-husband scoffed. 3 stepchildren, and you're playing mom all of a sudden? Just then, a man approached. It was Ethan, my current husband. Ah, there you are. Sorry I left the kids with you. I ran into my ex-husband and got caught up talking. Are you okay? Should I join the conversation? Ethan, sensing the situation, offered to join, but I said, it's okay, thank you. I'll talk a bit longer. You go back to the villa with the kids. Ethan knows all about how my ex-husband left me. He was probably worried, but I am no longer the weak person I was 20 years ago. Since I had the chance, I wanted to clear up any misunderstandings. Once Ethan and the children left, my ex-husband asked, A villa? You became rich or what? Not rich, but yes, we do own a villa here in Long Island. We're here on vacation. Actually, my current husband's father is the hospital director. And my husband is also a doctor. Wow. And just so you know, because you seem confused, the 2 younger ones are biologically mine. No way. You were sick, there's no way you could have kids. You're mistaken. I was never infertile. Indeed, I was sick 20 years ago, but that was not the reason I couldn't get pregnant. Abandoned by my ex-husband, who blamed me for not being able to conceive and then discarded me when I fell ill. I was despondent. At that time, Ethan, who was my attending physician, supported me. Not only was he a competent doctor, but he was also kind and helped me face my treatment. Thanks to him, I was discharged from the hospital. Ethan had lost his wife shortly after his child was born, and was raising a small child on his own. At first, the child did not warm up to me, but over time, as we got married and built a life together, we formed a trusting relationship. Later, I gave birth to 2 more children, making us a family of 5 with 3 children. Facing my bewildered ex-husband, I continued. My husband is the next hospital director. Our eldest son is in medical school to take over the hospital, and the younger ones might follow in his footsteps. My ex-husband, seemingly jealous, retorted. So, you moved up in the world all of a sudden, like me. But let me guess, your kid got into med school through the back door. Or some other dishonest way, right? My daughter earned her spot with a tutor. What are you talking about? We don't do things like that. Our son is so talented he gave a speech at the entrance ceremony. He's at T University's medical school. Is your daughter at the same one? Eh? That prestigious T University? No. I mean, my daughter is at S University's medical school. Seeing his reaction to hearing his son's university was a tough one, I smiled. That's why I'm happy now. Still wanting to belittle me, my ex said. Don't brag about something that's not even about you, it's disgraceful. Even though he had bragged about his daughter first. Still, I'm surprised you had 2 children. Then why didn't we have any when we were together? Ah, that question. Here I decided to share a speculation. Who knows? Timing is everything, and it's hard to say. But I let the implication hang. But, well, I remembered something after our divorce. You had mumps before we married, right? You had a high fever and missed work? So what? His voice trembled slightly. Since my current husband is a doctor, I asked him about fertility issues, considering our situation. He said infertility isn't always on the woman's side. I've had 2 kids since then. What are you trying to say? That men can become infertile from adult mumps. You're trying to say it's my fault, right? But that can't be true, can it? After all, I have a beautiful daughter. He nodded, acknowledging it, so I mentioned something that had been on my mind. It's true, isn't it? Your wife gave birth to your child, that's why you married her. But your daughter doesn't look like you at all. What? I can see she resembles her mother. But when I look at you and your daughter together, you seem like strangers. She has such a well-defined face. Right? I often hear she looks like her mother. My ex-husband boasted, oblivious to the implications. I dared to ask, has anyone ever told you she looks like you? Huh? He fell silent. That response was telling enough. He had never been told she resembled him. Is she your only child? Yes, having just her is enough for us. When we were married. You used to say you wanted a family with 2 boys and 2 girls. I said, a hint of sarcasm in my tone. That was a long time ago. Besides, having children isn't something you can just decide to do. That was exactly what I thought back then. Right. And since she's a president's daughter, unlike you, she wouldn't cheat. What are you trying to say? My ex-husband seemed increasingly unsettled. Well, I'm just wondering if she's really your child. That's all. Nowadays, anyone can do a DNA test. Have you checked? What? No, I haven't, but she got pregnant while we were together. So she must be my child, right? I wouldn't know, I didn't give birth to her. I'm just curious because you two don't look alike at all. It's none of my business, but if you're curious, why don't you check? You're saying she's not my child? My ex-husband almost seemed hysterical as he shouted. I'm not saying that exactly. I'm just talking about possibilities. But if she isn't your child, then you've been deceived for 20 years. Well, that's unlikely, right? But if it bothers you, why not check? I said with a smile. No, that can't be true. My family wouldn't have such issues. He staggered off in the direction his daughter and wife had gone. I was curious to see what would happen next. A few weeks later, I got a call from an unknown number. Hey, what should I do? The man on the other end sounded panicked. Mr. Ryan Baker? What's wrong? Hey, you were right, he said, his voice clearly shaken. I did a paternity test with my daughter. And it turns out there's almost no chance I'm her father. When I confronted my wife, she admitted she'd had an affair with her sister's husband. The daughter is actually my brother-in-law's child. Our family is a mess now. I don't know what to do. Turns out, my ex-husband was having an affair with his current wife at the time. But she was also cheating on him with her brother-in-law. To keep it from her sister, she claimed the child was my ex-husband's and married him. It was like something out of a soap opera. Surely, this was divine retribution for leaving me sick for his affair partner. Serves him right. Also, it turns out I have fertility issues. I married into a president's family. But none of my own blood will be born. Plus, the issue with the child might lead to divorce. My job might even be at risk. Can you help me? What was he thinking? It was all his own doing. I don't know what to tell you. You left me and chose that family, didn't you? You should discuss this with them and figure it out on your own. It has nothing to do with me. Please don't call this number again. Goodbye. After that, I heard no more from my ex-husband. However, rumors told me he got divorced and was kicked out of the house. He claimed he was deceived about not being the father. But his wife insisted she had told him before their marriage and he had agreed to it. In the end, he couldn't even get compensation. Moreover, because he had been working at his wife's company. After the divorce, he felt too uncomfortable to stay and quit. Where he is or what he's doing now, I don't know. After dreaming of having his own children and an ideal family when we were married. To find out now that he can't have children of his own. And that he has been raising a child not biologically his, must be truly miserable. Perhaps he is regretting his life choices. Years later, my eldest son became a doctor. And works at the same hospital as my husband. My second son has also passed the medical school entrance exams. And aims to follow in his brother's footsteps. Next holiday, my eldest plans to bring his current partner to meet us. Though he is not my biological son, I believe we have built a good parent-child relationship. After being discarded by my ex-husband, I almost gave up on life. But now my past seems like a lie, filled with so much happiness. My name is Sandra Holmes. I am 40 years old and I have no kids from my second marriage. My husband is a kind man who never misses our monthly dates. No matter how busy he is, he always keeps his promises. I know I shouldn't compare him to my first husband. But I have never regretted my divorce, nor have I regretted getting remarried. And this month is our 8th wedding anniversary. My husband had reserved a table at a fancy restaurant with a view of the sea. I thought we were going to have a wonderful time. But then I ran into the last person I wanted to see. It was Jim Stone, my ex-husband from 10 years ago. We were about to leave the restaurant after finishing our meal, when my husband excused himself to go to the restroom. I was admiring the ocean view from the window. What a beautiful view! As I gazed at the sea, I reminisced about the times my husband and I had spent looking at the ocean together. Just then, I heard someone call my name. And when I turned around, "Hey, what's so beautiful? Do you think a regular ocean appears nice to someone like you who's pretty much broke?" Jim. "Hey, long time no see. Why are you... Why?" "I'm the one who should be asking you why." Jim sat down in the chair my husband had been using, looking at me as if I was a joke. "Yes, those eyes. I put up with those eyes for a whole decade of our marriage. I never thought I'd run into you here. Can someone like you, who doesn't have much money, really eat at a fancy place like this? Can you even afford it? Or are you here for a once-in-a-lifetime thing? It's our wedding anniversary." "Ah. I see. Poor people can only come to places like this on anniversaries, huh? I come here often, you know." "You're still pathetic. Isn't there someone with you?" "Yeah, there is. I just sent her to pay. You know, handling money is a woman's job." I thought he was still the same, always belittling women. "Ah, she's back. Just wait there." The woman who came back was his lover from 10 years ago. She has aged quite a bit, her beauty half what it used to be, and she looks worn out from life. I guess Jim has been living it up while his wife suffers. "You're still wearing shabby clothes, aren't you? Aren't you embarrassed to dress so poorly? Talking to such a terrible man like him makes me feel sick." I turned my gaze toward the restroom, hoping my husband would return soon, and there he was. He had been watching us for a while, as I was talking to another man. Seeing the confusion on my face, he approached us. "Excuse me, do you need something from my wife?" "Your wife? This woman is your wife?" "Yes." "What do you need? You also look poor." "I guess poor women always remarry poor men." "Please don't be rude. My husband is a very respectable man." Jim snorted in disapproval at my response. "Humph. You must be just a useless, broke man." Then he glared at my husband. I thought, this man really hasn't changed at all. Jim was very selfish. Although he worked for a major corporation, it was unclear if he was competent. He was good at sucking up to his boss, though. He blamed his mistakes on his juniors, and loudly claimed their achievements were due to his guidance. How he managed to climb the corporate ladder is beyond me. But by the time we divorced, he had become a manager. Jim claimed he was an elite employee, but I never thought of him as elite. I graduated from a prestigious university. That's what Jim would always brag about. Not just any university, but a very different kind from the ordinary ones. When I was only dating him, I believed his exaggerated stories and thought he was really smart. But when we got married, I discovered that was his only real talent. Plus, he consistently degraded me, even though I only completed high school. Your parents were too poor to send you to university, right? But it's good for you. You didn't have the brains for it anyway. If your family had been rich, you would have had to go to university. But it would have been impossible for someone as stupid as you. My family wasn't poor. I just wanted to start working sooner rather than going to college. Ah, enough with the excuses. You can't handle not making excuses, right? You're an incompetent woman, after all. It's good for women, isn't it? Even if they're incompetent or stupid, as long as they have good looks, they can get by. If they catch a competent man, they can live well. I never imagined he would say such things before we married. So his transformation after marriage shocked me. Moreover, his parents weren't wealthy landowners. His father was just a director. Yet he ruthlessly looked down on anyone he considered poor. You really can't do anything right. You're bad at cooking, you can't clean, and you can't even have kids. Marrying you was a huge mistake. It wasn't a physical issue that prevented me from having kids, it was the stress caused by Jim. My family has always valued frugality and cherishing what we have. But when I cooked with radish leaves to save money, he yelled, "Are you trying to feed me trash?" and threw them in the trash. It made me realize how different we fundamentally were. One day, he told me he had a lover. The woman was much younger than he was. He pushed for a divorce, saying it was better for him to remarry a younger woman. I was happy to divorce such a man. I signed the divorce papers. Who is this man, Sandra? He's my ex-husband, Jim Stone. Oh, I see. Of course, I had told my husband about everything Jim had said and done to me. It had been a painful 10 years, and I had shared it all with tears. Then, without saying anything, my husband just listened and finally said, "Let's be happy from now on. You really dared to marry such a woman like her? Since you're marrying a woman from a poor family, you must be a broke guy too." Well, maybe. Maybe not. Of course, you are. So, you're also a broke man, huh? What? Marrying a poor person means you're broke too, am I right? But, why did you divorce such a wonderful person? Wonderful? Your eyes must be fooling you. Truly wonderful means having a beautiful wife like mine. He indicated his wife as he pointed at her, who stood there looking embarrassed. Is that woman your wife? Yes, she's beautiful, isn't she? She's actually my boss's daughter. Marrying the boss's daughter definitely helps one climb the career ladder faster. Marrying a broke woman like you probably means you're just a regular employee. Too bad. A regular employee? I haven't heard that word in years. What are you trying to prove? Bottom-tier guy marrying a bottom-tier woman. It just means you'll both be broke for the rest of your lives. And you think you deserve to eat in such a fancy restaurant like this? Well, this level of restaurant isn't a problem for us. Yeah, sure, if that's what you think. Just then, a waiter passed by. And my husband pulled out a black card, instructing him to settle the bill. Jim, surprised by the black card, tried not to show it but snorted again. Is that a black card? Showing off a card like that here, you're not used to it. Not used to it? You must have borrowed it from someone. Showing off by flashing the card. But later you'll have to pay back the person who lent you that card, right? I can imagine you're scared to splash the cash in such a place. It's all part of your act. Ha! Funny thing to say. Who would lend their card, I wonder? No matter how naive someone is, they wouldn't lend their card. How would you know that? Jim, you shouldn't say such insulting things. What's insulting? I'm just stating the truth. There's no way you could be wealthy if you married a poor woman like her. My wife is poor, you say? Yes, that's right. Her folks' place is a rundown one-floor home. You know that, right? Or maybe you were too embarrassed to visit her home. So you went to a family restaurant instead? Meeting her parents at a family restaurant for a marriage proposal is unheard of. But for poor people like you, it's probably the norm. Family restaurant, huh? The fact that you thought of that means you must have done your greeting there, right? If you hadn't experienced it yourself, you wouldn't have thought of it. What are you talking about? I'm not short on money. I wouldn't do such a miserable thing. Yet you came up with it. I never would have thought of that. Right, Sandra? What about you? Well, I think I'd like to go to a family restaurant occasionally, but we rarely get the chance. Exactly. What? You're lying. When you were with me, you were happy to go to family restaurants. That's because I had never really been to one before. Oh, I bet. You sure talk big. Coming to such a fancy restaurant just makes you want to act all important. Maybe that's you? It seems like you don't fit in this kind of place. What? You seem out of place, don't you think? There's no way I'm out of place. You're the one who doesn't fit in here. Do you even know who I am? Why would I know you? If you want me to remember you, just become famous. I am well known, though. Well, it's impossible for a regular employee like you to know me, I guess. What? I'm a manager, not a regular employee. Manager? Yes, how about that? Impressive, isn't it? At that moment, the chauffeur arrived, greeted politely, and informed my husband. Sir, your car is ready. Thank you. Huh, what's going on? Oh well, you're probably just the president of some small company. I work for a major corporation, the Holmes Group, and I'm a manager there. Oh, you're still just a manager? Excuse me. You consider yourself top tier. But staying as a manager at your age won't bring any advancement. What, this man works at our company? Yes, he's been with our company for a long time. What do you mean our company? You talk big, but you're just an office lady from a small company. That's right, I don't have kids or any reason to quit my job. But. So, you can't have kids? I was right, you can't have kids. Something's wrong with you. Hey, there's a line to how rude you can be. Sandra is perfectly fine. If she's fine, why can't she get pregnant? Women are supposed to have kids. I don't need to explain that to you. You can't say it because it would prove there's something wrong with her. This man is hopeless. Yes, so bad it's beyond saving. This man's name is Jim Stone. Yes, I understand. He's fired. Sandra, please contact HR. Okay. What? What are you saying? Trying to shock me with that? What company's president are you, thinking you can fool me with such an obvious act? Are you stupid? Jim, my husband is the president of the Holmes Group. What? That can't be. However, the driver, with a look of pity, nodded as he looked at Jim. What, seriously? Is he really our president? Yes, and I am his wife and the vice president of our company. What? That's ridiculous. How could Sandra from a poor family end up as vice president? With just a high school diploma? Such things don't matter. Whether someone graduated from high school or college doesn't determine their worth. That's ridiculous. I will never forgive anyone who insults my wife. No, there's a union, yes, there is a union. The union will protect us employees. You're a manager, right? Managers are not union members. So, you are not protected by the union. Didn't you know that? Seriously. Well, you better brace yourself. Since you insulted my wife, you must face the consequences. Oh no. Jim had a stunned look on his face, but my husband didn't care and asked me if we should go. Then, we left the table. That night, perhaps bothered by the afternoon's events, Jim called. His attitude was completely different from his arrogance earlier. Sandra, it's been a while. What do you mean? We already had a talk this afternoon, Jim. Ah, yes. What can I do for you? Your dismissal hasn't been issued yet. Ah, you guys were just joking, right? Huh? What do you mean? About you being the vice president and your husband being the president. No, they're all true. I'm surprised you don't know who your own company's president and vice president are. Why would you be the vice president, though? Because the best way I can help my husband is from the vice president's position. No. But it's strange. Why would a high school graduate be the vice president? It's not strange at all. I only graduated high school because I wanted to start working early. But after we separated, I acquired a college degree. Huh, really? Yes, there are schools you can do from home. So, you really are the president's wife? Yes. How did you manage to marry the president? When did you get married? We got married after I divorced you. I met the president soon after, and we dated for about 2 years before getting married. Why would the president take an interest in someone like you? Stop being so rude. Oh, sorry. Connections are mysterious, aren't they? I just happened to meet the president. Even so, why would he marry someone broke like you? Is he a philanthropist? No one marries for charity. If he's not a philanthropist, did he marry you to make you his slave? It's odd otherwise. Maybe today you got lucky to be taken to a fancy restaurant. But usually, you must be having plain, poor meals, right? And living a difficult life where you can't even buy what you like, am I right? Why would you think that? That's not true at all. You're the only one who would do such a thing. There's no way you could marry such a rich man. Why do you think so? Rich people have connections with politicians and other wealthy people. If a poorly raised woman like you shows up at their parties, it would embarrass the president. Or maybe he lets his mistress attend those instead. You're making wild assumptions. If you keep looking down on me like this, you'll truly regret it. I'm just concerned for you. A woman with a poor upbringing like you marrying a rich man like the president will only suffer. A regular employee's husband would suit you better. Marrying someone richer than me. You must be a foolish woman who can't see ahead. Who's the fool here? If you called just to say that, I'm hanging up. No, wait. I'm not trying to look down on you. It's just true that you come from poverty that can't be helped. Thinking I'm looking down on you for that is completely wrong. You say I come from a poor family, but my father is wealthy. Your family is poorer than mine. I didn't say it back then because of your pride. Your family home isn't even half the size of mine. Your father is just a department head, and you're still just a manager. That's not true. When I proposed to you, you were living in a small single-story house. That was because we were renovating our home then. We had stored all our belongings elsewhere. It was just a temporary residence, no need to move to a big house, my mother said. That can't be true. You don't have to believe it, but since the renovation is finished, Even if you say you want to visit my parents at home, you've stubbornly refused to go again. I couldn't tell you the truth. Who would visit such a poor, run-down house? You really are hopeless. Then, I'll send you a picture. This is my family home. You'll see from the picture. The photo I sent was of a large mansion. That's my house. I lived there for a while after our divorce. What? That can't be true. It's true. If this is true, then why were you working as an office lady in a small company? If you're so rich, you wouldn't need to work. And if you did work, wouldn't it be at a large corporation? Indeed, my father is the president of a major company. That company was a new one he started. When it was time to decide who would be the president, it was decided that my brother would take the role. So, I volunteered to handle the administrative work. Now, that company has advanced to the top of the industry. Is that true? Were you really so rich? Yes, this is the truth. This is the real me that you used to look down on. So, that's why you could marry the president? That's not it. I met the president because we shared the same hobbies. We met through our hobbies and hit it off. He didn't know I was the daughter of a wealthy family. And I didn't know he was the president. So, you are at the company where I work because of that? How long have you been at that company? I joined the company right after our divorce. I had a connection by chance. Why? When you were with me, you were a clerk at your brother's company. And after we divorced, you changed jobs? That's right. My brother's company has grown so much. And he told me it was time to do what I love. So I thought I might as well pursue what I've always wanted to do. Then, just as a senior position became vacant, they headhunted me. But at that stage, I still had no acquaintance with the president. He was still someone high above. I don't understand. How can you have connections like that? So, rich people just connect with other rich people? That's why I'm saying those things don't matter. Why do you think like that? It's because of that mindset that you're still just a manager. I wonder why your wife hasn't gotten tired of you yet. She can't get tired of me. I'm supporting her. Keep it up with that attitude, and you'll get what's coming to you. Anyway, that's the situation, so stop belittling me already. I wasn't trying to belittle you. I really thought you were poor. About that dismissal you mentioned this afternoon. Oh, yes, your dismissal. After all the mocking you did, it's only natural you'd be dismissed. That would make me in a tough spot. Can you talk to the president so I don't get fired? What? You were just mocking me tremendously, and yet you ask not to be dismissed? That's impossible, you know. I have nothing but resentment towards you. Why? The fact that you don't think you're resented is truly astonishing. What have I done to you? There's too much to even remember, it's that much. I bet your wife thinks the same as me. Why don't you ask her what she really thinks? Though I doubt she'll tell you. I only said those things because I thought you were poor. Why do you think I'm mocking you when I'm just being honest? Once words are spoken, they can't be taken back, you know? You should understand that as an adult. I do understand that. Then you should understand why you're being dismissed, right? No, I don't understand at all. Please, I'll be in trouble if I'm dismissed. If it were just about this afternoon, the president might have overlooked it. But then you had to call and ask why this and why that. My husband is here now, frowning. He really thinks you're hopeless. Maybe you should just give up, there's no saving you. No. If the president is right there, why can't you just say so? It's only natural for a husband and wife to be together. Besides, you didn't ask if someone was with me, did you? That's true, but you've poured gasoline on your own fire. You mocked not just me, but my parents and my husband too. Look, I didn't think you'd get this angry. Please forgive me. If I had known you were a wealthy lady, I wouldn't have said such mocking things. I won't say them again, please forgive me. Just give up. I think your dismissal order will come down tomorrow. Wait, please. Jim's voice echoed on the other end of the phone, but I hung up and looked at my husband. The next day, Jim came to the president's office. His face was all white, with dark circles under his eyes. And he seemed to be in a really bad condition. I was in a meeting with my husband, the president, about business matters. But I was startled by Jim's appearance. Jim, what's wrong? I'm very sorry. Jim apologized as he sat down on the spot. Jim, what are you doing? Please, just don't fire me. What do you mean? Of course, the president knew about yesterday's conversation. He had guessed from my responses during the call. And I had detailed Jim's remarks after hanging up. Therefore, his impression of Jim was very poor, and his anger was greater than mine. I am truly sorry again. I didn't know your wife was from a wealthy family. I think she is a perfect match for the president's wife. I also heard she graduated from university, even if it was through correspondence. She's a hard worker, a far cry from my own wife. So you decided on her as your wife, and then you got rid of her, right? What? Jim looked up at the president, wondering how he knew such a thing. Of course, I've told my husband everything. We're married, after all. Or do you and your wife not talk about your pasts? No, it's not like that, but that was a long time ago. I was young then. I thought Sandra was just a poor man's daughter. So I thought it was okay to have a mistress. How does it come to that? Is that why you think it's okay to commit sexual harassment or power harassment? What do you mean? Don't tell me you haven't done it? There are complaints from your female coworkers. They say if our company doesn't handle it, they'll go to the police. Our company was just discussing what to do about it. When your disrespectful remarks came yesterday. It's really hopeless, isn't it? That's right. I wouldn't have thought you were actually harassing or bullying. But watching you yesterday, it seemed all too true. You don't even regard women as people, do you? You think they're below you. No, I never, even if that were true, firing me would be too harsh. Please, show some mercy. Well, indeed, you have a family. If you were fired, you wouldn't be the only one in trouble. That's right. Exactly. My husband smirked and looked at me. So, what do you think, Sandra? How about sending Jim to our Ohio branch? Wait, what? The Ohio branch is in a region with very few people, practically unsustainable as a company. The former president, who came from that town, established the branch there to help the local people. But it's a lonely place with just one employee. The previous employee reportedly went mad from the loneliness. We want you to turn that branch around in 3 years. If you can do that, we'll bring you back here. Of course, if you can't, you'll spend your retirement in Ohio. Thank you. I appreciate it. Under the guise of the president's mercy, Jim set off for the Ohio branch. But both myself and my husband knew it was an impossible task. Having to work tirelessly alone for the small number of town residents. It was obvious that there wouldn't be any profit to be made. Unaware of this, Jim moved to the branch all motivated. His transfer was with his mistress who had been his wife. But surely she wouldn't be satisfied with just the cold and nothing else there. And eventually, she reached her limit. His salary plummeted, and despite being the branch manager in name, his pay was minimal, leading his wife to start yelling. This resulted in daily arguments. And although he boasted that if he turned things around in 3 years, he could return to the head office, his city-bred wife couldn't believe his words. She left the divorce papers and went back to the city. Jim tried his best for a year, but no matter how hard he worked, the population wouldn't increase and no profits would come. Eventually, he realized that no amount of effort here would change anything, and one day submitted his resignation. After leaving the company on his own terms, Jim contacted his wife, but by then, she had found someone new. Jim was not only ignored by her, but was beaten up by her new man, and ended up in the hospital. After being discharged, Jim looked for a job, but at his age, he found nothing. And life became harder for him. He lived in a shabby, run-down apartment, and the only job he could find was as a nighttime store clerk. The man who had once boasted of graduating from a prestigious university now stood alone in a store at night. As for me, I continued to be protected by my kind husband, enjoying another wonderful date this month. Marrying him changed my life so much. I'm grateful that Jim and I divorced.
Hey, maid. I've invited some celebrity friends over to our house, so entertain them, will you? When Lauren said this to me, I thought about how to respond. Guests were present, so arguing here wasn't an option. Thinking that, I remained calm, and Lauren stood there with her mouth wide open. She probably thought I would retort with a complaint or two. Ignoring that, I carried the prepared meal to the living room. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. I am Alyssa Morgan, the maid. I said this with a smile as I entered, but I was surprised by the faces of the celebrities around. It wasn't just me who was surprised. Seeing me, the celebrities started murmuring among themselves. Then one of them questioned Lauren.
How come this lady is here? I can't believe she's a maid. What does this mean, Lauren?
Nick's quick action, when he got back, made Lauren lose everything in no time. My name is Alyssa Morgan. Last spring, at the age of 65, I retired and now live a quiet life. Having lost my husband early, I raised my eldest son, Nick, on my own. Nick, now 39, got married 6 months ago. Since then, I've been living comfortably alone in an apartment. Now that I am free from work and family responsibilities, I thought I would enjoy my own time. But reality was not so sweet. The problem was Nick's wife. Lauren, who became my daughter-in-law, is 27 years old, a decade younger than Nick, and comes from a decent family. Nick, originally shy, had never had a girlfriend before. Apparently, he met Lauren at a matchmaking party he was invited to by a friend. I don't know much about current marriage customs, but Nick, who became an associate professor at a university in his late 30s, attended a party exclusively for men with annual incomes over $80,000. So even if the men were significantly older, the women were quite proactive in their approach. For the shy Nick, being approached by a young woman probably didn't feel bad. But as a mother, I just didn't feel right about this unnatural way of getting to know people. Still, seeing Nick happily introduce Lauren made it impossible for me to frown. In that spirit, I decided to accept Nick's marriage positively. But Lauren was brought up all proper, but now she's a wife who can't do squat. Because of her, I ended up being dragged around a lot. My headaches started just before the wedding. On the day of the family meeting, I found myself alone with Lauren in the restroom. We made eye contact and I smiled gently. However, Lauren smirked maliciously. What do you think about my parents? Yes, they're very nice folks indeed. I answered calmly, but Lauren replied with a look that said, "That's not what I meant. My parents run a company, so they are of a different class. They will also pay for the house we will live in as a couple, and it will be in the most upscale residential area around here," Lauren said proudly in a ladylike tone. I knew from Nick that Lauren's parents would build them a new house. Still, I didn't feel good about Lauren looking down on me. I also replied, unable to resist, "It seems so. I will also help financially as much as I can." Then Lauren snorted and smirked again. "You don't have to pressure yourself. Since you're not working, you don't really have that flexibility, right?" Lauren always had a way of saying things that got under my skin. I was about to respond, but Lauren left the restroom and started sweet-talking to Nick, who was waiting outside. Nick also smiled happily. For Nick, this was the happiness he had finally found near the age of 40, so I couldn't interfere. Thinking this, I had no choice but to stay silent at the moment. Lauren probably just disliked me because I was going to be her mother-in-law. If she truly loves Nick, things will probably work out. Believing this, I decided not to meddle in their marriage and to keep a distance from the newlywed couple. But once they got married, all kinds of terrible things started happening. Lauren, who couldn't do anything, would call me first thing in the morning. She didn't know how to use the washing machine. Even when I explained over the phone, she didn't understand, so I had no choice but to go to her.
"Alyssa, you came. Please do the laundry right away."
I was just there to explain how to use the washing machine, but Lauren dumped all the laundry on me, and then told me to clean as well. Lauren didn't even know how to use a vacuum cleaner. Even as I showed her how to do things while explaining, she ignored me and watched TV. When I tried to scold her, sensing this, she ran into the restroom and stayed there for 30 minutes, leaving me to clean up in the end. Since then, Lauren has been calling me over to do all the housework and on weekdays when Nick was not around. And on top of that, she never appreciates me and just says mean things.
"Alyssa, you're free anyway, so it's fine for you to do this much, isn't it? Unlike my parents, you didn't contribute to our house money."
Lauren said this and then went out during the day to enjoy socializing with her friends. She even told everyone that she had a maid at home, so she left all the housework to her. I was infuriated by Lauren's attitude. "Lauren, no matter what, that's too much, isn't it? I'm here out of kindness because I understand you're struggling with unfamiliar housework." Even when I said that, Lauren didn't change her attitude at all, lying sprawled on the living room sofa.
"What? Acting all high and mighty just because you're a maid? Just so you know, if you complain to Nick about this, I won't let you off easily. I'll cry to Nick that I've been bullied by you."
Lauren was just impossible to deal with. I regretted not opposing the marriage from the start. Lauren had me come over and then said she'd send me away before Nick got home in the evening. This kind of situation continued daily and I was fed up. One day, as usual, I received an early morning call from Lauren. However, Lauren seemed unusually flustered today. "What's the matter? You seem in a hurry." When I asked, Lauren responded with a troubled voice.
"Today I'm hosting my birthday party at home. I was supposed to call my mom to help, but she just informed me she can't make it. Please come over right away."
It appeared Lauren had planned to have her mother prepare for her birthday party. Now that she couldn't come, she wanted me to take care of the party preparations. Well, I thought I was going to be called for housework anyway, so I was ready. "So I'm stepping in for your mom?" "Understood. I'll be right there."
"Oh, wait a minute. I haven't prepared any food yet. Make sure you've bought the ingredients to start cooking right away."
Yes, yes. Knowing Lauren, I was aware there would be nothing in the kitchen. I bought some groceries from an early opening supermarket before heading over to help Lauren. Lauren checked every item I bought, scrutinizing the prices and ingredients.
"Oh, it's a party, so I wished you had bought something better. Well, nothing can be done now. There's no time, so hurry up with the preparations."
As usual, Lauren treated me like a maid without thanking me for the groceries I brought. I had given up on complaining and immediately started the preparations. Meanwhile, Lauren didn't bother to help and was solely focused on her makeup. After a while, Lauren's friends, whom she had invited, arrived at our home. I was still preparing the meal in the back, so for now, Lauren greeted them at the entrance alone.
Everyone, welcome to my birthday party today. I've prepared lots of delicious food, so please enjoy your time.
Despite her attitude towards me, Lauren entertained her friends with a demeanor completely pretending to be a celebrity. Even from the back, I could clearly hear Lauren's voice. She was speaking 2 octaves higher than usual, which almost made me laugh. While preparing the meal, I listened to her voice. Then I overheard a conversation that sent chills down my spine.
Is the maid preparing the food again today?
Yes, she does whatever I ask her to, but don't expect much in terms of taste. She's a terrible maid.
The guests laughed with an at Lauren's words. I knew she had been telling her friends that I was the maid, but calling me a terrible one was too much. Despite doing the housework without complaint until now, such treatment was unjustifiable. Lauren continued to badmouth me, getting carried away.
Really, our maid is so sloppy with cleaning, and she doesn't even make the laundry fluffy. She's just the worst.
Then why not change your maid? I can introduce you to a good one.
No, we aren't as wealthy as your families. We can barely afford a bottom-tier maid like her.
Listening to this, it was truly a ridiculous conversation. Yet I really wanted to speak my mind against Lauren, who casually insulted me. Just as I thought this, Lauren finished her conversation with her friends and entered the kitchen. Then Lauren turned to me and, with the most arrogant tone possible, said,
Hey, maid, I've invited some celebrity friends over, so entertain them, will you?
When Lauren said this to me, I thought about how to respond. Guests were present, so arguing here was not an option. Although I was seething inside, I replied with a smile. I understand. You sure have some very classy friends. You must be happy. Lauren was taken aback by my response, her mouth hanging open. She probably thought I would retort with a complaint or 2. Ignoring that, I carried the prepared meal to the living room. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. I am Alyssa Morgan, the maid. I said this with a smile as I entered, but I was surprised by the faces of the celebrities around. It wasn't just me who was surprised. Seeing me, the celebrities also began to murmur. Then one of them questioned Lauren.
How come this lady is here? I can't believe she's a maid. What does this mean, Lauren?
As one of the celebrity friends questioned Lauren, the others looked at her with skepticism. Lauren stood there as if dumbfounded.
Huh? What? What's wrong, everyone?
The celebrities ignored Lauren's question and looked at me instead.
It's been a long time, Professor Morgan.
It's been a while, everyone. I never thought I'd see you all like this. I really have to thank my terrible daughter-in-law at least. I said this, glaring ostentatiously at Lauren while addressing the celebrities. Realizing I was Lauren's mother-in-law, they all glared at Lauren. Lauren, caught lying, looked embarrassed.
Lauren, isn't it rude to call such a wonderful person like your mother-in-law a maid? This lady was our beloved professor during our college days.
Yes, she was awarded the title of honorary professor after retiring, a well-respected figure around here. Didn't you know that, Lauren?
The surrounding celebrities said this, and Lauren looked on in shock. And no wonder. Until now, she thought I was just a retired old lady. In fact, in this upscale residential area, there has always been a focus on children's education, with many famous cram schools. So even ladies from good families attending an Ivy League was not unusual. Today's young celebrity wives were all graduates of the Ivy League where I used to work. Even though they were also ladies, Lauren had graduated from a private university in the city, so she was unaware of my reputation. I apologized to my former students, the celebrities, for any discomfort caused. Sorry, everyone. My daughter-in-law started living in this residential area without knowing anything. When I said this around me, Lauren glared at me with a face that seemed to say,
Don't make fun of me.
Then about 3 minutes passed, and Nick came back. Actually, he had returned about 10 minutes earlier, but had quietly gone into his room. Lauren, who usually expected Nick to still be at work, panicked upon his return.
Nick? Why are you home at this hour?
As Lauren fumbled her words, Nick answered calmly.
Today is your first birthday since we got married, so I came home early. But it seemed like not the right time to speak up, so I waited in the room for about 10 minutes.
You should have told me earlier that you were coming back early, Lauren said, sweating.
Nick probably intended to surprise her by coming home early. However, given the conversation he overheard, it's no wonder he didn't feel like coming out. Lauren cautiously asked, peering into Nick's face.
Did you hear the voices?
I heard everything. I could clearly hear from outside that you were calling Mom a maid.
Lauren's face turned pale at Nick's words. Then she turned to me, sounding almost like she was about to cry.
Did you know Nick was back? Why didn't you tell me?
Lauren looked at me with pleading eyes, as if she wanted me to somehow cover for her. However, no matter how much she pleaded, I couldn't feel like helping her. Well, I'm not sure. I thought I heard something at the front door while I was preparing the food, but I was so busy I didn't notice. I said that, but the truth was I clearly knew that Nick had come home. Nick had entered the front door just as Lauren was in the middle of bad-mouthing me. That's why I looked at Nick and signaled him with my index finger to shh. That made Nick quietly enter the bedroom without Lauren noticing. I wonder how Nick felt, listening alone to the whole thing about me in his room. I was worried about how he was taking it, but it seemed he was indeed shocked. Nick said to Lauren with a sad expression,
Lauren, I knew that Mom came to our house every day to do housework. I recognized Mom's cooking, the way she folded the laundry, and how she cleaned.
Lauren looked uncomfortable and apologized. She probably felt it was too late to make excuses. Nick continued speaking.
But I'm not angry that you asked Mom to do housework. I believed you were getting along well with her. And yet, what is this? Calling Mom a maid while making her work, and all the while saying bad things about her. I never thought you were that kind of person.
Lauren would surely reflect if she was scolded this much. That's what I thought, but suddenly she raised her head with a new resolve. Then an unbelievable reply came from Lauren.
Your mother didn't contribute money when we were building our house. Unlike my parents, I thought she was poor, so I told her she didn't need to contribute. What? Hiding that she was a university professor? That's sneaky.
Lauren blamed me even now. Feeling the need to clearly deny it, I raised my voice. No, I wasn't hiding it.
That's right. When I introduced her to you, Lauren, Mom had already retired, so I thought there was no need to talk about her past job. Saying she was a university professor might sound like bragging, right?
Nick and I explained this. However, Lauren was not satisfied and wouldn't back down.
I don't want to hear such excuses. It's like I was the fool for not knowing. If I had known, I wouldn't have called her a maid.
Lauren claimed she was humiliated because she didn't know. She had decided I was poor from the beginning and treated me like her servant without basis. It seems she didn't reflect at all on what Nick had said earlier. Finally, Nick's patience ran out and he raised his voice.
Lauren, what does it matter if Mom wasn't a university professor? A woman who judges people by her own standards is no longer my wife. We're getting a divorce. Please leave right away.
At the word divorce, Lauren flinched for a moment but quickly responded defiantly.
Fine, but remember this house was built by my parents, so you should be the one to leave.
With that, Lauren slammed the front door and left the scene. She probably went back to her parents' house to complain.
Oh, wait. The money for this house was...
Nick tried to call out to Lauren as she left, but it was too late. It's okay, Nick. She'll understand soon enough. With that, Nick calmed down and said,
Well, yeah.
Anyway, the divorce was now inevitable, and Lauren would lose everything. It wouldn't take long for her to realize that. More importantly, I was concerned about my former students who had come. The sudden incident had caused a stir among them. Everyone, I'm truly sorry this happened when you all came today.
No, please don't worry about us. But what a terrible daughter-in-law.
Yes, it's absolutely right to get a divorce.
What was supposed to be Lauren's birthday party had turned into a celebration of my reunion with my former students, who had become celebrity wives. So I took the opportunity to ask how Lauren usually spent her time with these glamorous friends. According to them, Lauren was indeed an outsider among the group. Lauren couldn't keep up with their conversations, but still tried to blend in by clinging to everyone. Everyone said they couldn't stand how I, their mentor, had been exploited by Lauren. Thus, they not only supported the divorce, but also wanted to give Lauren a piece of their mind. Everyone, I appreciate your feelings, but that's no longer necessary. Lauren will soon understand that much worse treatment awaits her. After saying this to everyone, I enjoyed conversations with my former students over the dinner I had prepared until the evening. Just when I was thinking about wrapping things up, Lauren came back crying. She must be shocked after learning all the facts.
Why did this happen?
Oh, it seems you did go back to your parents' home after all. When I spoke up, Lauren glared sharply at me.
You knew and kept quiet again, didn't you?
Hey, what kind of way is that to talk to Mom?
Because she never tells me anything. She really is a coward.
Lauren screamed and then burst into tears with a loud In fact, Lauren's father had recently gone bankrupt, and he had accumulated debt trying to pay his employees. At that time, Lauren's parents came to me for advice. Despite having promised to build a house for their daughter and her husband, they now had to allocate what they could pay towards settling their debts.
When I went back home, Mom and Dad were preparing to move out. They have to give up the house because of the debt. You knew that too, didn't you? Why didn't you tell me?
Lauren said this while crying. I answered in a calm voice to soothe her. Your parents didn't want you to know anything, if possible. That's why they made me promise not to tell you.
And it turns out you paid for this house, didn't you? Does that mean I have to leave?
Realizing everything was against her, Lauren looked down, avoiding my gaze. Nick placed his hand on Lauren's shoulder, trying to reason with her.
Lauren, just apologize honestly for what you've been saying to Mom. Even if we can't continue together, I'll try to help you get on your feet after the divorce.
Nick said this, but Lauren sulked and retorted.
Why should I apologize? I've been deceived by this woman all along, failing to notice my parents' crisis and losing my home because of it. If anything, I'm the one who deserves an apology.
The surrounding area became noisy at Lauren's outburst. Although I had been treating Lauren kindly out of pity, I could no longer tolerate it. Don't you understand yet? Your parents didn't want to worry you, so when they asked me to handle the house payments, they begged me, please take care of Lauren. And yet, you never considered their feelings, only asserting your own. When I conveyed the parents' feelings, Lauren had nothing to retort. Then, Nick also spoke up.
Well, anyway, I've decided to divorce you, Lauren. I'll pick up the divorce papers tomorrow, so please sign them. Pack up your things by tonight and leave by tomorrow.
What? I can't just leave all of a sudden.
Lauren said this in a fluster. Even if she thought of moving in with her parents, their new place was only a small apartment suitable for two. Looking troubled, Lauren glanced around, hoping her celebrity friends would help, but no one paid her any attention.
Sorry, but Lauren is no longer part of our group.
That's right. You're not rich or anything anymore, just another person struggling.
While saying this, the celebrities verbally abused Lauren. They were probably taking action on their earlier discussion about giving Lauren a lesson. Lauren bit her lip, looking down silently. She seemed to realize that she had lost not only her family but also her trusted friends. Then, the next morning, Nick went to get the divorce papers and Lauren hesitated to sign, worried about being cast out without a place to go. While trembling with a pen in hand, she finally broke down crying.
I'm sorry, I won't exploit you anymore, Alyssa. I won't call you a maid ever again, so please forgive me.
Lauren cried out, but when I looked closely, there were no tears on her face. She was probably faking her tears, suddenly scared of leaving. Nick and I, not falling for her act, scolded her.
It's useless to say that now. Who would be fooled by such crying?
Yes. Instead of crying, you should seriously think about what to do next. Convinced that everything was over, Lauren finally signed the divorce papers. Then, taking her packed belongings, she left the house. I noticed tears in Nick's eyes. For Nick, it was happiness he had finally found. And yet, thinking of me, he had decided to go through with a divorce. I gently placed my hand on Nick's shoulder. Are you really okay with this? When I asked, Nick, who had been looking down, turned around and showed a smile.
I'm also too old to be caught up in such nonsense. I really had no judgment, getting involved with a young woman after money.
Nick's smile seemed lonely. What should I say at such a time? Nick had always been a dutiful son. Maybe that's why he made such a sacrifice this time. Nick, thank you. You're not pitiful at all. You're kind and willing to sacrifice yourself for others. Surely someday a good person will come along. Yes, if you believe, a good connection will surely come. When I conveyed this thought, Nick also smiled and said,
Yeah, maybe.
And Lauren, in the end, moved into the cramped apartment where her parents lived. They seemed to regret having driven her out after asking me, their mother-in-law, to take care of Lauren. Lauren's parents had truly trusted me. That's why, thinking this couldn't go on, they had brought Lauren to my place. However, I did not invite them into the house but conveyed their message at the front door. What happens in a marriage is a matter between the spouses. Nick is currently trying hard to move forward positively. So isn't it best for the parents not to interfere in their divorce? The parents nodded in agreement to my opinion and said, yes, yes. Lauren showed an attitude towards her parents saying,
See, I told you it was pointless to come.
That day, after getting their understanding, I decided to send them home. However, it seems that Lauren continued to have arguments with her parents afterwards. The parents kept saying that the failed marriage was Lauren's fault, despite having managed to marry her off to a good family. However, Lauren still insisted that the real problem was me and that I was lying. Since then, the relationship between Lauren and her parents remained tense. Years later, unable to bear it any longer, Lauren left her home and came to Nick's place. She begged for reconciliation, but there was no way Nick would consider it now. Seeing Nick's cold attitude, Lauren hurled insults at him.
Nick, I just wanted to be with a man who earns well and settle down in a family. But Nick, with his mediocre income of $80,000 a year as an associate professor, wasn't enough. All the celebrities' husbands earn over $100,000. Back then, I really felt out of place among them.
What are you trying to say?
That means you'll never get remarried in your life. You're not attractive to women to begin with, and with your half-baked earnings, even gold diggers won't come near you.
Nick burst into laughter at Lauren's words. Not just Nick, but I and another family member who were listening from the back also laughed out loud.
Who says I can't get remarried? Listen, can you hear that unfamiliar female laughter from the back? She's my wife.
What?
Yes, Nick has just remarried, and his new wife is living in this house. I happened to be visiting, so I was listening to the conversation between Nick and Lauren. By the way, Nick has become a professor at the university at an unprecedented speed. When Nick told this to Lauren, she showed a surprised expression.
So much money as a professor? And I thought Nick would still be alone since he seems unlikely to have any women around.
Me? And how many other men did you visit before coming here? And since they didn't care about you, you thought I'd still be available, right?
It seems Nick hit the mark. Lauren left the scene quietly with a disappointed look. I still kept in touch with Lauren's parents, so I know that after her divorce, Lauren got hooked on matchmaking parties again. However, it appears there are no men willing to be involved with Lauren, who isn't so young anymore. Perhaps she thought Nick was still single and tried to reconcile with him. However, with the current situation, Lauren has no choice but to live alone from now on. Even her parents say they have given up on her. According to her parents, Lauren moved in with an elderly man living alone. Apparently it was for his money, but soon after they started living together, he required care. The elderly man, who disliked the idea of entering a facility, asked Lauren to care for him. With nowhere else to go, Lauren resigned herself to the unfamiliar task of caregiving. Meanwhile, our home is enjoying happy days with Nick's new marriage. Nick learned a lot from his failed marriage. With a broader perspective and increased interactions with people, Nick became close to a female colleague of the same age who also worked as a lecturer. She too had a divorce history, which led them to hit it off. After a year of dating, Nick remarried. His new wife is a wonderful person who said to me, "Let's live together." However, as much as she offered, I politely declined. In fact, I had been contacted by the university I had worked at to return. Returning to work meant living with my son and his wife would be inconvenient due to various considerations. So I decided to continue living freely on my own. At the university, I had interacted with many students over the years. They studied various fields and then ventured out into society. I loved being part of this educational environment. Recently, among the celebrity former students I reunited with, some now have children. They made this request to me.
"Professor, you've returned to teaching. We want our kids to be taught by you as well, so don't stop being a professor."
Waiting for their children to turn 18 will take another 14 to 15 years. Yet, I have vowed to fulfill that promise. As long as this body holds up, I want to continue watching over as many students as possible. That is, after all, my greatest joy as a university professor.
Don't worry, I've already decided about Dad's inheritance. I'm taking the money, and you can have that abandoned house. After our father passed away, my brother Paul arbitrarily distributed the inheritance. Moreover, my sister-in-law also taunted me with a full-faced grin. You should be thankful even for a haunted house. That house looks like it could collapse at any moment. If you don't demolish it soon, we'll get complaints from the neighbors. I felt anger rising within me as she referred to our family home as a haunted house. Reluctantly, I was cleaning the wildly neglected house. When I opened a safe in my father's room and found something unexpected inside. My name is Ashley, a 36-year-old office worker living with my husband and son. Balancing work and raising my 5-year-old son is tough. But with my husband helping with housework and childcare, I've managed to persevere. Until 3 years ago. My mother was healthy and would sometimes help by picking up my son from daycare. My mother, who lived with my father in our nearby family home, had been taking care of my son until she suddenly passed away unexpectedly. My father had been unwell and receiving medical treatment. So I had never imagined my mother would pass away first. I'm sorry for making you suffer through taking care of me. Before the funeral, he said that through tears. Hearing my father's words, I also reflected on having relied on my mother to take care of my son. And my husband comforted me. It's not your fault or your father's. Your mother seemed happy taking care of everyone. She must have been satisfied. Even with what my husband said, I couldn't accept it immediately. The sudden loss of my mother was a great shock to both my father and me. And we were unable to think of anything else, so my husband took care of the funeral arrangements. My brother Paul, however, acted as if it was someone else's problem even after our mother's death. I'm not going to be the chief mourner. I've never done a funeral before, so Ashley, you guys handle it. As the eldest son, my brother should have been preparing for the funeral. But he said this with a look of annoyance. I had hoped that he would step up for our mother's funeral, but that hope was in vain. Thanks to my husband, the funeral went smoothly, but by then, Paul had disappeared. Paul is such a disappointment. She can't rest peacefully in heaven. When my father said that with a sigh, I agreed with him. The funeral was over. And I was contemplating discussing our father's future living arrangements with Paul. Worried about leaving my father alone due to his poor health, I considered having him live with us. Just as I was about to contact Paul, he and his wife showed up at the family home. Let's talk about Mom's inheritance. As the eldest son, I can decide, right? As he started to say arbitrary things, my sister-in-law continued with a smirk. I'll take this house, but I won't take care of your father. I was furious that my sister-in-law, who hadn't even shown up for the funeral, was interfering in the inheritance. You didn't even attend the funeral. You must have been very busy, huh? Even as I spoke sarcastically, she pretended not to hear. The atmosphere turned tense as Paul and his wife appeared. And my father, with a look of dismay, said, "This house is in my name, so it's not part of the inheritance. Your mom's assets are just some savings, so let's distribute them as planned." I hadn't cared much about my mother's assets, but as he said, there were only a few savings. My brother and his wife, unable to believe his words, searched around the family home. "What's inside this safe?" "There might be gold bars." Pointing at the old safe in my father's room, my brother yelled. The safe had been there since I was little, and I had never seen inside it. There's no key for that safe, so it can't be opened. Besides, who would put valuables in such a small safe? As he said, since the safe isn't that big, there's a risk that a thief could steal it along with everything inside. Despite Paul's quick resignation, my sister-in-law seemed curious about what was inside. "If there's no key, why don't we just call a locksmith to open it? Even though it's small, it might contain something like a passbook." Hearing this, Paul seemed hesitant, but my father retorted in exasperation. "You can hire a locksmith if you want, but you'll have to pay the fee yourselves. I believe it only contains some documents." Hearing that, it seemed like too much trouble for Paul and his wife. Just then, I remembered that my mother had given me a key when I was young. I wasn't sure if that was for this safe, but she had mentioned keeping that with me. Paul had never seen the safe opened and assumed it unlikely to contain valuables. He figured that since my mother's passbooks and insurance documents were stored elsewhere, there wouldn't be anything else of importance. It's a waste of money to pay a high fee for worthless documents. Get rid of that confusing safe. As Paul spoke in frustration, his wife agreed. We divided my mother's estate according to the law. But Paul and his wife seemed dissatisfied with the small amount. My sister-in-law, not even an heir, kept complaining until the end. Once the inheritance discussion was over, Paul appeared indifferent about my father's future. So I told him I would take our father home. "You take care of Dad. Just don't monopolize his assets." I was surprised by my brother's focus only on the assets, and then my sister-in-law chimed in. "Exactly. Your father was a company executive, so he must have substantial assets." I was annoyed by her interference in the unrelated matter of my father's inheritance. True, my father had been a senior executive at a large company and probably had significant assets. Unlike my mother, but I didn't care about the inheritance. What worried me was my increasingly frail father, especially after my mother's sudden death. But it seemed like Paul and his wife only cared about the inheritance. I was relieved and happy that my husband agreed to have my father live with us. My father soon moved in with our family. And we decided against moving into the old family home because it was in poor condition. Empty father started to recover gradually, enjoying his time with his grandson. He continued his medical visits, and his health didn't deteriorate much, which reassured both my husband and me. With my father living with us, we stopped going to the family home, which became worryingly neglected. Should we consider selling the family home? The building is no longer usable, right? My husband agreed, so we discussed selling it with my father. He was also concerned about the deteriorating state of the home, and contacted a real estate agent right away. However, Paul and his wife suddenly showed up at our house, causing a commotion. "That family home will be mine in the future, so don't dispose of it without my consent," his wife shouted threateningly. "Don't let Ashley trick you into selling it." My father and I were surprised by their complaints since we hadn't anticipated them. When my father suggested transferring the home to Paul as is, his wife objected even more. Who would want that abandoned house? It's just trouble. Plus, there'd be gift tax, so we'll wait until you pass. What we want is a clean, single-family home. Ashley, can you clean it? And also renovate it while you're at it. The building may be dilapidated, but the land can be effectively utilized. My sister-in-law had done her research and even discussed tax implications. It was possible to dispose of my father's land and building despite their objections. But we stopped the sale due to their persistent arguments, with the vacant property issue becoming a nuisance. My husband and I decided to at least maintain the yard to avoid troubling the neighbors. However, the building itself did turn into a ruin. Not realizing how quickly a house could deteriorate when uninhabited, my father and us were shocked. We had removed any valuables from the home, but the unopened safe in my father's room remained. Was there really nothing important in that safe? When I asked, my father also admitted he wasn't sure what was inside. Your mother had the key, but she never seemed to use it. Hearing this, I became convinced that the key my mother had given me was indeed for that safe. Since moving in with us, my father had been more energetic than before. But he had caught a cold a while back, perhaps due to letting his guard down. Initially, my father thought he would recover quickly. But he didn't improve and eventually had to be hospitalized. Thinking Paul would be concerned, I informed him, and he came to the hospital with his wife. Tell us about the inheritance while you're still conscious. Dad, you must have various assets besides the family home, right? As Paul abruptly started talking about the inheritance, I was about to object when his wife yelled at me. You and your family aren't secretly taking Dad's money, are you? Just because you live together doesn't mean you can cheat. Their focus on money rather than my father's health infuriated me. My father, still conscious, tried to calm them down, but they weren't really listening. Throughout their visits to the hospital, Paul and his wife kept checking how much wealth there was. So my father eventually gave up and disclosed details. Once they knew how much my father had, Paul and his wife were delighted and then stopped showing up. Angry at my brother's heartlessness, I overheard my father muttering, "When they're so happy about it, it becomes hard to tell the real story." When I questioned my father, he did not respond. After a while, my father's condition became critical. And when I contacted Paul, he said something appalling. Is Dad finally going to kick the bucket? I've got lots of preparations, so I'll leave the rest to you. His voice carried an unsettling cheerfulness. I was about to argue, but he abruptly ended the call. His attitude, seemingly waiting for our father to pass away, almost made me explode with anger. Regretting that I had informed Paul, I prayed for my father's recovery. But sadly, my prayers were not answered. I didn't want to talk to Paul, so I had my husband contact him instead. You can handle everything else. Dad said it's fine. I'm busy with the inheritance, so you guys take care of the funeral. Paul seemed cheerful when he talked to my husband. Normally calm, my husband was visibly upset and told me about it. I hadn't expected much from Paul and his wife since they hadn't been helpful during my mother's funeral. But it was hard to forgive their preoccupation with the inheritance. Thanks to my husband, we managed to carry out my father's funeral smoothly, and I was grateful. I expected Paul to start making noise about the inheritance. And sure enough, he showed up at our house. Don't worry, I've already decided about Dad's inheritance. I'm taking the money, and you can have that abandoned house. It's untouched, and we don't want that anyway. It seemed Paul had preemptively decided how to divide my father's estate. He probably didn't care about the land anymore. My sister-in-law, arriving with him, said with a full grin, "You should be thankful even for a haunted house. That house looks like it could collapse at any moment. You better demolish it quickly before we get complaints from the neighbors." I was annoyed by my sister-in-law's sarcasm, especially since she had opposed selling the house when my father suggested it, but now urging us to demolish it. It seemed like Paul and his wife were inheriting the cash and leaving me the burden of the dilapidated family home. Angry at their absence at the funeral and their arbitrary decision about the inheritance, I was trembling with anger. Seeing this, they left, looking pleased. Don't be too upset. An inheritance requires a formal division agreement, so it won't just happen the way your brother said. Comforted by my husband, I decided to clean up the family home with him. Regardless of who would inherit, it needed to be done. When we went there, the place was even more run down than we expected. Is that safe in your father's room still unopened? Curious about the contents, I had brought the key my mother had given me long ago. With a nervous heart, I inserted the key, and with a loud noise, the safe opened. It was this key after all. Opening the door, we found only documents inside, leaving both my husband and me slightly disappointed. Imagine if there had been gold bars in here. Your brother and his wife would start another uproar. While my husband chuckled and looked through the documents, his expression suddenly turned serious. Noticing his change, I also looked at the documents and couldn't help but exclaim. I had never heard such a thing from my parents. I wonder if Paul even knows about this. Although my husband was initially shaken, he quickly smiled. If your brother knew about this, he wouldn't have decided on the inheritance on his own. He'd be shocked to see these documents. While my husband seemed amused, I was too shocked to smile sincerely. When we brought the documents home, my brother and his wife soon arrived in a flustered state. When I tried to withdraw Dad's savings at the bank, they said I needed a division agreement and a family registry. Let's prepare the division agreement quickly. My husband struggled to hold back his laughter as he responded to my flustered brother. We will prepare the division agreement, but you're not involved, right? After all, you're not his biological child. Paul and his wife were dumbfounded when they heard this. So I showed them the family registry that was in the safe. So, you were Mom's stepchild? I just found out myself. But since you weren't legally adopted by Dad, you don't have inheritance rights. Even as I explained, my brother and his sister-in-law stared at the documents, unable to grasp the reality. Watching him carefully read through the documents, I realized the meaning behind our father's words before he passed. Father's phrase, "It becomes hard to tell the truth," referred to the fact that my brother was not his biological son and had no inheritance rights. Paul finally seemed to understand as he silently stood there. However, not willing to give up, his wife exclaimed she would obtain a new copy of the family registry and stormed out. The family registry we had was old, and although it might have been updated, given my father's words, it was unlikely Paul was legally adopted. Unfortunately, it seems you can't inherit his estate. I wish he had told you. As I spoke softly, my husband showed me a letter that he had found in the safe. It was addressed to me from my mother, left in case of an emergency. It appeared that my father had intended to legally adopt Paul as a son. But since my father was wealthy, she opposed it. She felt sorry for letting Paul inherit as he wasn't her biological son, stating that just being raised as a true son was enough. She had tried several times to tell this to Paul but never did, and ended up writing the truth in the letter. She wanted me to tell Paul after she passed away and had entrusted me with the key. When I showed Paul the letter from our mother, he seemed to accept everything. Make sure you tell me important things. I thought I was going to inherit a lot and went on a spending spree. Hearing my brother's confession, my husband and I panicked. Apparently, they had splurged on cars and luxury goods, thinking he would inherit all of my father's savings. You might want to hurry and return those purchases, right? You don't have the money to pay for them, do you? My husband, who had been smiling moments ago, turned pale upon realizing the amount they had spent. I admired my husband's genuine concern even though it was not his direct problem. Chastised by my husband, Paul quickly left, and soon after, his wife returned. Oh, it turns out Paul really isn't your father's child. I thought we were going to inherit, so I secretly went into debt. Hearing her confession, my husband and I were at a loss for words. The distressed sister-in-law begged me for money, and I responded with restrained anger. I can't give money to someone who didn't even attend the funeral. It would upset my deceased parents. Desperate for money, she became aggressive. I won't be able to pay my rent if this continues. Just lend me the money quietly. Losing patience with her demanding tone, I retorted sarcastically. If you can't pay the rent, I could rent you the house you called a haunted house for cheap. With nothing to say in return, she left with a look of frustration. Paul tried to sell what he had bought, but couldn't recover the full amount, and the debt remained. My sister-in-law was also reprimanded for her secret debts. The large amount panicked Paul. They tried to ask relatives for help, but no one was willing to assist two people who hadn't even attended their parents' funeral. As my sister-in-law had feared, they couldn't pay the rent and were evicted from their rental home, now hopping between hostels. Surprisingly, despite their strained relationship, they hadn't divorced. No matter how hard they tried, the debt never seemed to decrease due to interest. Meanwhile, using the inheritance, I renovated our derelict family home and we started living there. Initially, I had considered selling it, but memories of my parents made me want to keep it. Our new home was much larger than the previous one, and our son enjoyed running around happily. My husband was also pleased with the move to a homeowner from a renter. And we all felt the move was for the best. The money I inherited allowed us to renovate it like a new house. But I kept the safe with my mother's letter inside. Keeping the safe made it feel like my parents were still with us, lessening the loneliness.
I am Sandra. A few weeks ago, my father, who had been ill, passed away. I wish I could have shown him his grandchild's face. As I sighed, those words escaped my lips. I got married when I was 25. That was exactly 5 years ago. I had made this promise with my father who attended my wedding. I'll tell you first when I get pregnant. However, that promise was never fulfilled. That's about the only regret I have regarding my father. Since my father's illness was discovered a year ago, I have tried to do everything I could for him. I regularly returned to my parents' house and visited the hospital with my mother. We also made phone calls and even video calls. Basically, I did everything I could think of. Still, it doesn't mean I don't have things to think about. I wonder if I could have done more. As I muttered this, my mother next to me said,
"It's okay, Sandra, you did well."
"Really?"
"Yes, I'm sure your father was pleased too."
As we were having this conversation, my sister Tracy finally came home. "I'm home. I've brought the lawyer with me." Saying this, my sister entered the living room. Following her was a man in his mid-40s. I guessed this man must be the lawyer, and as I thought this, the man greeted.
"I have contacted you. I am Lawyer Brown." "Thank you for coming. Please come this way." "Then if you'll excuse me."
Led by my mother, Lawyer Brown took a seat. Then almost immediately, my sister started saying, "I heard from this lawyer that there's quite a bit of inheritance from Dad." "You're not getting all of it, you know." "I know that." My sister glared at me angrily as she shouted. Naturally, I glared back. My sister and I have never been on good terms. It wasn't this bad in the past, but things turned sour quickly after my father's illness was discovered. A lot of it was due to my sister's arrogant attitude. Despite my many attempts to contact her, she never came to visit our father. Maybe my approach was too harsh at times. I was worried about our father and might have spoken too strongly, but my sister's response was just as stubborn. "We're not children, there's no need to be so stubborn." To which my sister retorted, "Huh? I'm not being stubborn. It's just not easy to come from the city." This place is in the countryside, yes, but it's just an hour by train, right?
That 1 hour is tough. It costs money, too.
Is money that important to you?
It obviously is. I'm busy, so stop contacting me,
she snapped at the end. No matter how far away she lived, she could have shown her face occasionally. That's what I always thought, and that's how our relationship quickly deteriorated. In the end, my sister never came to visit our father, so our relationship is still strained today. Sensing the tense atmosphere, the lawyer intervened.
Please, calm down.
Yes, I'm sorry. As I apologized, the lawyer nodded and continued.
As I mentioned over the phone, I am in possession of your husband's will. When did he?
As my mother murmured, the lawyer said,
It was a few weeks before he passed away. He requested it over the phone. So you went to the hospital? Yes. Under the supervision of his primary physician, he wrote the will right in front of me.
It seems that my father had arranged for the doctor to contact the lawyer after he passed away. After my father's death, the primary physician contacted the lawyer. Following this, the lawyer contacted our family.
And that's why I contacted you.
As he said this, the lawyer took out a white envelope. He placed it in front of us and said,
Here's the will.
That's definitely Dad's handwriting, I murmured as I confirmed the word will on the envelope. Meanwhile, my sister seemed impatient.
Never mind that. Hurry up and tell us what it says. I'm busy.
Let's proceed then.
The lawyer smiled wryly as he opened the envelope. Inside was a single piece of paper. It read, Father's estate included the house, land, some savings, and a storage shed. We knew about the house and land, but what was this shed? As I pondered, my sister asked the lawyer,
Hey, what about the farm?
The farm?
Yes, the farm Dad used to tend to as a hobby.
During his life, my father ran a company in the next town. However, after turning 50, he began feeling the toll on his body.
I'm thinking of closing the company. I want to take it easy. Is that okay?
I heard this when I was in high school. My sister, who was in college at the time, objected, but my mother and I, thinking of Dad's health, agreed.
Tracy, don't worry about money. I have enough saved up.
Upon hearing this, my sister reluctantly agreed. Afterward, Dad really did close his company and started growing vegetables in a field near our house.
It feels good to move around growing vegetables.
Seeing Dad happy about it, I truly felt good about agreeing, but it seems my sister didn't feel the same. She said she would return home after graduating from college, but instead she got a job near her university. Eventually, she spontaneously married the CEO of an IT company she met at work. Setting that aside, Dad continued to work in his garden until he fell ill. Now my sister was claiming that the farm was part of the inheritance. The lawyer reviewed the documents after hearing my sister's claim. Soon he found a note and said,
The farm was rented.
Rented? I thought it was a large piece of land.
My sister was visibly disappointed. Indeed, the farm where Dad grew vegetables was expansive, but it would be too much for us who knew nothing about farming. Maybe it was better that it was just rented. That's what I thought. As we discussed, the conversation shifted to the division of the inheritance.
As for the division of the estate, the house and land are to go to your mother.
My sister smirked at this.
So we can split the rest as we like?
Please divide the savings and the storage shed fairly between you.
You mean cash by savings, right? I want the cash. How much is there?
The savings amount to about $100,000. With this amount, there's no need for inheritance tax.
Then I'll take the $100,000 in cash,
my sister declared triumphantly, but there was no way I could agree with such a selfish proposal. I objected firmly. Wait a minute, I'm against that.
Why? I'm the eldest.
That has nothing to do with this.
You can have the shed, that's fine. Wait, what's in the shed anyway?
My sister turned to the lawyer who was flipping through the documents.
It's the shed next to the farm. You inherit the building, the land it sits on, and everything inside.
It comes with land?
Her eyes lit up. Married to the CEO of an IT company, yet still hungry for more money? As I stood dumbfounded, the lawyer informed her.
It does come with land, but it's only about the size of 75 square feet.
What? 75 square feet?
Yes, here's a photo.
The lawyer placed photos of the shed on the table, showing both the interior and exterior. The exterior was just a shabby shack, clearly worn out. Inside there were only items like hose and garden scissors, nothing that seemed valuable.
I don't want that.
My sister's face twisted in displeasure. I peeked at the photos too, and it was all very ordinary stuff. I thought, They're just sentimental items, but they won't bring any money. As I was thinking, my sister said to me,
Fine, I'll take the cash. You take that dirty shed.
Wait a minute, that's not fair.
You were the one who supported vegetable gardening. What are you complaining about now?
It was hard to argue back. Yet if I didn't say anything, all of Dad's estate would end up with my sister.
So we're agreed then.
My sister pressed for confirmation. As I struggled to respond, my mother interjected.
If Tracy won't complain later, I won't object.
Why would I complain?
Then it's settled. Tracy takes the cash and Sandra gets the shed.
Okay, that's decided then.
My sister smirked. Sensing something was off, I immediately objected. Wait, I haven't agreed to this.
Huh? Just give it up.
But...
Do you really want money that badly? You're so greedy.
It's not like that, but...
You really are tedious. Isn't Dad more important to you than money?
That left me speechless. Of course, family is more important than money, but certainly money is important too. It shouldn't be compared with family. As I was lost in thought, my sister quickly concluded the discussion. In the end, the division was decided. My mother received the house and land, and my sister received Dad's savings. All that was left for me was the dirty shed. Afterwards, my sister signed a document stating she would not complain about the inheritance division and left with a loud laugh. I, on the other hand, was full of dissatisfaction. I, voicing her frustrations to my mother, asked, Mom, why didn't you help me?
Oh, I did help you.
How? You just sided with Tracy.
That's not true. I made sure you got the shed.
Huh? I'm not happy about getting that old shed. Mother, smiling, suggested.
You might find it surprisingly nice if you go there.
I could only puff out my cheeks in response. The next day, I took the key I got from the lawyer and headed to the shed near the farm. It was just a few minutes' walk from the house, a rural road with no one else around. Eventually, I reached the farm that my father had rented. He had been hospitalized all year, so the farm was barren. I glanced at the empty farm as I unlocked the shed. Wow, the dust. The shed was quite dusty because it hadn't been cleaned. Still, I thought there might be some of my father's keepsakes inside, and began searching the shed. Nothing special here. It was just a dirty old shed. All I found were the tools my father used for gardening. They could be considered keepsakes, but they weren't anything significant. Maybe I should just take these things home for now. As I murmured this, I looked around the shed and noticed something. Huh? It seemed smaller inside than it looked from inside. Maybe it was just the dim light, but the shed felt a bit cramped. Is it just my imagination? Thinking this, I stepped outside, but the feeling of discrepancy persisted. After some thought, I decided to check around the back of the shed. The back was bordered by a forest of dense trees. Looking there, I was surprised to see a door on the back side as well. Huh? A back entrance too. Saying this, I had a sudden realization. From inside the shed, I saw only a wall. That meant there was only one entrance, but from the back side, there was clearly another door. What does this mean? I pondered. Normally, you should be able to see this door from inside as well. However, it wasn't visible from inside the shed. If that was the case, it meant there was a wall in between. In other words, there was a space that could only be entered from the back. The moment I realized this, I got excited. I thought, this must be a surprise set up by Dad. My father always loved surprises. He used to surprise me on my birthdays as well. Flooded with such memories, I found myself in tears. I quickly went back inside the shed and began searching for the back door key. If it were my father, he surely would have hidden it somewhere in the shed. With something akin to certainty, I rummaged through the shed. After a while, I discovered 2 keys hidden in the handle of a shovel. Going back to the back side, I inserted one of them into the door. With a click, the door opened. I thought, I wonder what's inside. Inside was indeed a very narrow space. It was only a few dozen inches wide. There stood a large safe, all alone. This one? Of Dad's company? I recognized the safe. It was the one that had been in the corner of the president's office when I visited my father's company as a child. How nostalgic. I rushed to the safe, a tangible memory of my father. My heart swelled with emotion. This alone was worth a significant part of the inheritance, but knowing my father, this wouldn't be the end. There must be more surprises. As I murmured, I inserted the other key into the safe. With a slightly rusty sound, the safe opened. What? No way! The moment I saw the contents, I gasped. Inside was an unexpected inheritance. What should I do? Oh, right. I need to tell Mom. I locked the safe and hurried to where my mother was. After explaining the situation to her, I called my husband. With his help, we transported the safe to my parents' house. That's when I realized the contents of the safe were undoubtedly my father's. However, including the shed in my inheritance might mean I'd have to pay inheritance tax. I better get this checked out properly. The contents of the safe were clearly valuable at first glance. After some thought, I decided to consult Lawyer Brown.
Inheritance tax, you say? In that case,
according to the lawyer, it would be better to consult a tax accountant for inheritance tax. He arranged for me to meet a tax accountant he knew. I left the complicated matters to the tax accountant. As time passed, about half a year went by. Just as I thought things were settling down, my sister came to my house, which was near our parents' home. What brings you here all of a sudden?
Yeah. I had some business at our parents' house.
Did you stop by on your way?
Something like that.
My sister's behavior was odd. It didn't add up. Even though we lived close to our parents' house, it took a good 10 minutes by car to reach the house I shared with my husband. Our relationship has soured over our father's situation. Just stopping by isn't something we would normally do. I couldn't shake off my suspicion as I watched her. Despite her nervous behavior, Tracy asked,
"Can I come in?"
"Sure, but do you need something?"
"I need to talk."
She forced a smile and said that. Reluctantly, I let her into my house. After I served some coffee, she started fidgeting and blurted out,
"I have to ask directly. Did you win the lottery or something?"
"Huh? No, I haven't."
"Then did your husband get a bonus?"
I tilted my head. I don't buy lottery tickets because I'm not interested in them. Moreover, while my husband does receive bonuses in the summer and winter, it's rare to get one at this time of year. What was she talking about? Confused, I decided to ask her directly. "What are you talking about?" Suddenly, Tracy burst out angrily.
"Huh? Are you making fun of me?"
"What? What do you mean?"
"Money, Sandra, money. You have it, don't you?"
"Money? What about it?"
"Yes, I heard about it."
My sister began to speak excitedly, recounting a story from a few days earlier. Living in the city, Tracy had randomly encountered a female relative from our mother's side while downtown. This relative, upon seeing Tracy, started this conversation.
"It must have been hard with your father."
"Yes, well..."
"I visited him several times to pay my respects."
"Is that so? Thank you."
"But really, was it right to receive such a gift?"
"A gift?"
"Yes, didn't your sister send gift vouchers? Worth several $100s?"
"Gift vouchers?"
This was how the conversation went. Understandably, what caught my sister's attention were the gift vouchers. Hearing that I had sent them, Tracy assumed I had come into some unexpected money.
"You must have come into some money. Tell me."
My sister pressed me, and I sighed in resignation. Then, sensing my attitude, Tracy snapped.
"What's with that attitude? Are you mocking me?"
No, it was just a sigh.
"So where did the money come from? That's what I want to know."
"Where? From the inheritance, remember?"
"Inheritance?"
"Yes, after we've received the inheritance, I sent the vouchers to the relatives who had helped us." I explained this, and Tracy frowned.
"But all you got was that dirty shed."
"That's right."
"And there's no way that shed could sell for any real money."
"But there was a safe inside. That's where the real inheritance was."
"What? A safe? Real inheritance?"
Since Tracy looked baffled, I patiently explained. Inside the shed's safe were watches. They were all expensive pieces, collected by my father as a hobby during his lifetime. However, I wasn't sure of their exact value. On the other hand, the remaining cash from the estate was about $100,000. Considering he had been an early retiree as a business owner, this amount seemed modest. This indicated he might have invested a significant amount in those watches.
"If they're high value, you'll have to pay inheritance tax."
After seeing what was in the safe, that's what my mother said. "What should I do, Mom?" After thinking it over, she advised,
"These things always come out. You should file it properly."
"How?"
"Well, let's ask that lawyer we talked to last time."
Thus, I consulted Lawyer Brown. He informed me that the inheritance tax would be based on the current value of the valuable items. He also recommended that I consult a tax accountant, whom he could refer. I left everything in the hands of this accountant. Eventually, it was discovered that the watches alone were worth several hundreds of thousands of dollars.
"With watches this valuable, you'll need to pay inheritance tax."
"How can I afford that?" He suggested,
Why not keep the pieces you're emotionally attached to and sell the rest?
Indeed, as someone who didn't understand their full value, there was no point in me keeping such expensive watches. I preferred them to be with someone who appreciated their worth. With that thought, I ended up selling several of the watches. With the money from selling the watches, I paid the inheritance tax and used the remainder to the relatives who had helped us. Those took the form of gift vouchers. Among the items I kept was the pocket watch my father often wore. I shared this story with my sister while showing her the watch. It's not expensive, but it holds the most memories for me. However, upon hearing my story, my sister frowned and asked,
"What? There's nothing left?"
"No, there are a few left in the safe."
"Where's the safe?"
"It's at Mom's place. It was too heavy to move here from the company." My sister's expression turned contemplative, and I sensed a flicker of unease. But then she abruptly stood up and said,
"I'm leaving, now that I know where the money came from,"
and left. Given my sister's greedy nature, I thought she might demand some of the money from the sale of the watches. Well, at least she left without making a scene. I was relieved. However, I should have remembered that my sister isn't usually so understanding. That slipped my mind until later that night when I got a call from my mother.
"It's urgent, Sandra. Please come over right away."
"What's wrong, Mom?"
"Just hurry, it's serious."
Panicked, I rushed over with my husband. As we neared the house, I noticed something unusual. The area around the house was illuminated in red. What's going on? It became clear as we got closer. Several police cars were stationed around the house. I made my way through the crowd of onlookers to speak with my mother. "What happened, Mom?"
"Oh, Sandra, you see."
She explained that around 9 p.m., feeling tired, she had gone to bed early. Soon after, she was disturbed by strange noises, the sound of someone rummaging through things, thumping and bumping around. Mother thought,
"It must be a burglar."
She thought it was a burglar. Being alone, she felt powerless and decided to flee through a window. As she looked back, she could see the beam of a flashlight moving inside the house. Convinced it was a burglar, she ran to the neighbor's house and exclaimed,
"Help! There's a burglar!"
The neighbor, hearing this, immediately came out. They noticed a flickering light where my mother pointed. Naturally, the neighbor thought it was a burglar too and called the police. But it turned out not to be a burglar at all. It was just my sister sneaking around inside the house. Hearing my earlier story, my sister has secretly gone to search the safe. Of course, neither my mother nor the neighbor knew this. Soon, the police arrived due to the supposed emergency. However, the arrival of the police startled my sister. Thinking,
"I need to get out of here,"
she panicked. In her haste to escape, she bumped into the open safe door. Unfortunately, the safe, destabilized by the impact, tipped over toward my sister as she tried to flee, trapping her beneath it. So did my sister end up pinned under it?
"That's right."
"Really? Is she okay?"
"She was taken to the hospital by ambulance, but she keeps saying her leg hurts."
What was she thinking? I was truly exasperated. Later, both my mother and I explained it to the police officers who arrived to help. Moreover, since my sister was injured, I reluctantly called her husband late at night, to which he exclaimed,
"What? She sneaked into her childhood home?"
"Yes, that's what happened."
"What is she doing? She doesn't even do any housework."
"I'm really sorry about my sister."
"Never mind, I'm going to divorce her now."
"Divorce?"
"Actually."
According to her husband, my sister had accumulated a considerable amount of debt. It seems she had been spending lavishly on luxury items. This came to light during a severe argument they just had. The last thing my sister said before storming out was,
"I'll borrow from Mom and pay it back."
Apparently, the $100,000 my sister received as inheritance had also been poured into paying off her debts. Still not enough, she came to me, hoping to demand more money, only to find out about the contents of the safe. It's no wonder her husband was furious. Eventually, with a fractured leg, my sister remained in the hospital where her husband approached her to initiate divorce proceedings. Naturally, she made a big fuss.
"I won't get divorced. Absolutely not."
But it was too late. Her husband had an application of the divorce papers. Presented with the papers, she had no choice. Now my sister lies bewildered in her hospital bed. Next to her, there's a magazine with part-time job ads, likely planning to start working to pay off her debts. For me, that's preferable. As for me, after the commotion, I decided to move back home. Of course, I'm worried about my mother, but there's another reason. I'm pregnant. After discussing with my husband, we planned for me to have a hometown childbirth at my parents' house. Though I wished my father was alive to hear the news of my pregnancy, I'm sure he would be delighted. So now I'm looking forward to giving birth to a healthy baby.
Today is the wedding day of my beloved brother. The sky is clear, and a comfortable temperature caresses my skin. It's a perfect day for our wedding. As I proceed to the venue in my wheelchair, the bride, Lucy, looks at me and says coldly, "Today is my big day. Someone as ugly as you, with scars on your face, should not be here. I'll accept your wedding gift, but please leave immediately." At Lucy's serious demeanor, my relatives could hardly contain their laughter. At that moment, Lucy's father hurried over to her and raised his voice. "Lucy, don't you know who that lady is?" "Huh?" The moment the truth was revealed, Lucy's face turned pale, and she was at a loss for words. "I am Maggie Davis, in my mid-30s and still single." "In my early 30s. My parents often asked, 'Isn't it about time you got married?' but recently. Such questions have rarely been heard. Even at this age, I still have little experience in love and don't really think about getting married. Right now, I am enjoying my work immensely. However, as I reach my mid-30s, many of my classmates are married and raising children. And my parents probably thought I would be doing the same. Besides my parents, there are others who care about me. One of them is my brother, Eric, who is 10 years older than me. Since there is an age difference, Eric has always taken good care of me since I was little and cherished me. Perhaps what people call a sister complex. Even so, Eric was concerned that his sister, who was past marriageable age, had no intention of getting married. He once said, "Maggie, don't you really like someone or have someone you're seeing? If you're looking for a partner, I can introduce you to someone." What are you saying? Don't talk like Mom and the others. But isn't a woman past 30 the age most concerned about marriage? Well, I don't think so. Why are you suddenly bringing this up? Could it be that you have a girlfriend around that age? Oh, you caught me, he laughed. I learned that he had been dating, for about 6 months, a woman from a company he deals with. Her name is Lucy. She's turning 30 this year and wants to be a housewife. She seems ready to get married soon. Eric wanted to discuss with me how she feels about it. You know, I can't give advice on romantic issues, I sighed. Well, but you're closer to her age. So I thought maybe I could talk with you about how women feel. No good, huh? Eric chuckled wryly. It seemed he himself was uncertain about marriage. Well, if Lucy wants to get married and you like her, it should be fine. Yeah, right. Whether my advice helped or not, Eric decided to get married. Later, his fiancée, Lucy, was scheduled to come and greet our family. Eric also wanted me to meet her. Lucy likes cute things and dresses neatly. She's gentle-natured, the opposite of you, but I hope you two get along, he said. Hearing that, Lucy seemed just Eric's type, gentle and prim. However, something unexpected happened on the day Lucy came to our house. I was so engrossed in my work that I forgot that day was the day. My workplace is a separate building from the main house, across the garden from the living room. When I was working, the phone started ringing loudly. Since I often don't notice calls on my smartphone, important calls usually come to the phone in my workplace. Wonder what it is, I thought as I answered the phone. It was Eric. Maggie, do you remember what day it is? He asked, and I pondered. Oh no. Today is the day Eric's fiancée is visiting, I thought, holding the receiver. I opened the curtains of the large window facing the living room and saw Eric also holding a receiver at the window. A beautiful woman was standing next to him. He confirmed my presence and said, Maggie, you got caught up in your work again, didn't you? Sorry. I just forgot. I'll get ready now, so please wait a bit. That outfit will take an hour to change. We have various wedding arrangements later. Eric thought, and then our mother called him. Mom just called me. Can you talk to Lucy over the phone for now? You can see her from there, right? Eric handed the receiver to Lucy and then disappeared. Lucy, seen through the window, was wearing a neat dress and had her hair elegantly styled, looking demure. But I could tell she was staring intently at me. While considering this, I tried to speak. Nice to meet you, I'm Maggie, Eric's sister. Sorry, I wasn't prepared to greet you properly. If you could wait about an hour, I can come to you in proper attire. However, Lucy's voice over the phone sounded colder than expected. Proper attire? No matter how much you dress up, that face. Excuse me? I thought I had misheard. Eric had told me Lucy was gentle. But the impression over the phone was quite the opposite. Lucy. I heard he had a sister, but this is really shocking. Don't come here. It's disgusting. What? Eric seems to really dote on you, but you're nothing like I imagined. What? Even from a distance, I could tell Lucy was getting irritated. Is there something you're upset about? I tried to clarify. You're in a wheelchair. I can tell even from across the window that you have a flawed face. Lucy clearly looked down on my appearance. Well, this person might have some character issues. As I was thinking this, Eric came to call her. Lucy, the coffee is ready. Come to the guest room. Eric took the receiver from Lucy and said, Maggie, you were in the middle of work, right? Sorry for interrupting. But you forgot today's plan, so that's on you. Anyway, you just greeted her briefly, right? No need to come all the way to the main house. Eric hung up, smiling and leading Lucy away. From this first impression, I didn't think very highly of Lucy. However, marriage is something done by the will of the people involved. And I thought it was fine if Eric wanted to marry her. But then, later, there was talk of meeting each other's families, but for some reason, I wasn't invited. Wondering why, I asked Eric, and apparently, it was Lucy's suggestion. According to her, I seemed busy with work. And she felt it was unreasonable to call me just for a meeting. Hearing this, Eric thought since we had already met and talked through the window at home, it wasn't necessary for me to come. While I think Eric considered my personality in making this decision, I felt that Lucy's thinking was probably different. It seemed like she thoroughly disliked me from our first meeting. Well, it's human nature to not mesh well with everyone. But, how appropriate is it to treat a member of the family you're marrying into this way? My doubts remained as wedding preparations moved forward. Regardless, if Eric is happy marrying Lucy, then that's what matters. However, if she's pretending to be something she's not just to marry him, that's a different story. By the way, when I asked him if he had mentioned my work to Lucy, he said he had. But from the way Lucy spoke, it seemed like there might be some misunderstanding. How did that happen? There was only one way to find out. I suggested a surprise at the wedding reception to Eric. Then came the wedding day. I brought Sherry, who always supports me at work, to the wedding venue. As I announced my name at the reception, the staff's expression changed. Could you please repeat your name? I'm Maggie, the groom's sister. I'm supposed to have a surprise part during the ceremony. As I said this, I had a bad feeling. Yes, the groom mentioned that. But the bride informed us that you couldn't make it today due to an urgent matter. The staff explained, looking perplexed. What? Lucy, who deliberately did not invite me to the meeting, was also planning not to let me attend the wedding? I asked the staff to call the bride. After a while, Lucy, dressed in a pure white wedding dress and perfectly made up, came over with a friend. Her friend was startled to see me. "Hey, is this Eric's sister?" "Wow, what an outfit." I could hear whispering voices. I was in a wheelchair, wearing a black dress, and my face was hidden by a veil. Then, far from whispering, Lucy said loudly, "Anyone would be shocked to see such a figure, right? But today is my big day. I'm the star. I don't want a woman in a wheelchair with facial scars drawing all the attention. I have many friends here, and having you around would just embarrass me. Marrying Eric and having you as his sister is an unexpected blunder." "Big blunder?" "That's right. Eric seems to dote on you, but it must be out of pity for your appearance." Lucy continued, looking down on me. "Eric is handsome, and being married to him will make my friends envious. But with you around, they'll laugh at me for having a monster-like sister." Lucy was getting more agitated. I frowned as we exchanged words. Not only the staff, but also some of the guests began to gather around. I was bothered by the murmuring crowd. But there was something I needed to confirm with Lucy. "Lucy, aren't you marrying Eric because you love him?" "Of course. He's handsome. We'd be the perfect couple. That's why I don't want a monster like you near Eric. Leave your gift and just go home." As Lucy spoke, there was a moment of silence around us. However, her words caused our family members who were present to burst into laughter. Then, Lucy's father rushed over in a panic. "Lucy, what are you saying? Don't you know about Maggie's job?" "What?" Lucy looked completely baffled. I decided to reveal my true self right then, though it was supposed to be a surprise. "Lucy, look at me," I said, and as Lucy looked at me suspiciously, I stood up from my wheelchair and walked confidently in front of her. "Wait, what? You can walk? What does this mean?" Lucy was visibly shaken. Standing face to face with her, our eyes met through my veil. She was clearly perplexed. Next, I took off my veil and touched my face, slowly peeling off what appeared to be skin. "Oh no. Monster." Lucy backed away, her face turning pale. I continued to tear off my scar, revealing it to be silicone artificial skin. "Lucy, this is my real face." "What? That is." Lucy stared at my face and the silicone skin in my hand, pointing at that with her trembling finger. "Oh, this? It's a modified face mask I made. I'm a special makeup artist." "Special makeup? So, you don't really have scars?" "That's right. Am I being deceived?" Lucy turned to her father. "Dad, did you know this? Of course, Maggie is a well-known artist in the industry. Didn't you listen when Eric talked about her?" "What?" Lucy still looked confused. It seems Lucy disliked when Eric talked about me and barely listened. "Lucy, what is this all about? I heard from the staff that you excluded Maggie from the guests. And what you just said." As he spoke, Eric appeared in a white tuxedo, looking very handsome. "Oh, well, it's my big day, right? I thought it would be sad if Maggie, in a wheelchair with noticeable scars, came and drew attention. Unbelievably audacious. Lucy, didn't I tell you about Maggie's job? When you saw Maggie working that first time, you didn't say anything. So I thought you understood. You weren't really listening to my stories, were you?" The disappointment in Eric's voice was evident. What? I was listening. I just happened to forget that part. Don't lie. I heard the conversation part way through. Did you choose me just for my looks? And what you said to Maggie? I can understand his anger. But it's because Maggie's makeup was so incredible. I was just fooled by it. For some reason, she tried to shift the blame onto me. But for me, that was a welcome reaction. Thank you for the compliment. I was testing a new creation then. A client wanted a character of a woman in a wheelchair with facial scars. I always start by applying the makeup on myself to test it. I was really in a wheelchair. You misunderstood it through the window. But thanks to that, I could see your true nature. I smiled warmly at Lucy. The bride in her pure white dress glared at me with her bright red lips and fierce eyes. I felt amused. It seems fun to create such expressions with makeup. While thinking this, I expressed my sarcastic gratitude to Lucy. Despite what happened, thank you for calling me a monster. It means my makeup was that realistic, right? It boosts my confidence. Lucy bit her lip in frustration, but she probably wouldn't bother with me for long. Let's have the guests leave for today. We can't proceed with the ceremony like this. That's what Eric said after seeing the commotion around us. What? Even though everyone gathered? I dressed up beautifully. After this pre-wedding entertainment, let's just proceed with the ceremony. Lucy was eager to continue. But Eric was no longer in the mood. After hearing what you said earlier, I was honestly shocked. So, I want to rethink our marriage. We can't have the ceremony today. No way. Lucy looked like she was about to cry. Lucy, let's go home today. Her father urged her, and Lucy limped away to the back room. And the ceremony was cancelled. Later, Lucy and her parents visited our home to discuss what to do about the engagement with Eric. I was there, but Lucy wouldn't look at me. Funny, I'm not even wearing special makeup today. Eric, I'm sorry about last time. I must have been having wedding blues. Lucy tried to dismiss her previous disgrace with the excuse of wedding blues. However, Eric proceeded with the conversation calmly. Lucy, shouldn't you be apologizing to someone else first? You insulted my sister first, right? Reluctantly turning to face me, Lucy said, Maggie, I'm sorry for saying such terrible things. It was obvious her apology wasn't heartfelt. She quickly changed the subject. Eric, now that I've apologized, let's set a new date for our wedding. I think I'll change my dress. It wouldn't be fun to wear the same one as last time. I want you to see me in a more beautiful look. Lucy was clinging to Eric. Clearly, she hadn't reflected at all. But then, let's call off the engagement. He declared this as he pulled away from Lucy. Why? Are you still angry? I apologized properly to your sister. And I thought we could move past what happened before. That's not possible. I didn't realize your true nature until then. I thought you were kinder. Plus, you only like me for my looks, right? I can't marry someone like that. That's why I had your parents come over today to talk this through. What? Wait, Dad, do something. This is a business partner, right? Say we'll cancel the contract or something. Lucy clung to her father this time. However, Lucy, what are you saying? If they cut ties with us now, we'll be in trouble. Eric, Maggie, I'm sorry for the unpleasant feelings. We're okay with calling off the engagement, so please keep the contract as is. Oh no. Actually, Eric works for a major company. And Lucy's father's company is just one of their suppliers. If the contract were cut, it would be Lucy's father who would be in trouble, not Eric. Rejected by her own father, Lucy looked dejected like a small child. Just like at the wedding, she was dragged away by her parents. Later, I heard surprisingly that Lucy had gotten married. Her partner was the son of a business associate from a different company from Eric. Given Lucy's character, she probably couldn't admit to her friends that the engagement was broken. I don't know if she could brag to her friends. But her partner was shorter and much less attractive than Eric. After that, I asked Eric, "Eric, are you glad you didn't get married?" "Yeah. Marriage is the starting point of building a family. And it wouldn't work out with someone who can't cherish themselves or their partner's family. It's good that we stopped the marriage at that time." "Right. Well, I'm sure you'll meet someone nice soon. If you ever want to verify someone's true nature, just consult me," I said half-jokingly. "Right, I'll count on you then," Eric replied with a smile. A few months later, I heard that Lucy had gotten divorced. After the marriage, she apparently wasn't satisfied with her partner and spent a lot of money at nightclubs, which led to the divorce. Her attitude after the marriage was poor, and her partner was quite angry, terminating the business dealings with her father's company and demanding a substantial amount of property division. Lucy is now working in a bar in a bustling district, living in a shabby apartment. The irony of her serving drunk customers with a forced smile, after looking down on others, made me laugh. As for me, my newly tested makeup was a hit with clients, leading to a series of new requests. The makeup was a zombie bride look with a pale face and a pure white wedding dress, dripping blood from torn lips, and it was well received for its realism. This makeup was inspired by Lucy's expression at that time. Thanks to this, I've become well known as a special makeup artist. And now I spend my days immersed in the makeup work I love. Moreover, a movie using my makeup won an award abroad. And now I'm involved in a joint production with a Japanese company. I'm excited about what kind of work I'll create next. As for Eric, he hasn't felt like dating for a while. But there seems to be a good vibe between him and Sherry, who has supported my work for a long time. Given her gentle nature, she might be a good match for my kind brother. If they get married, I'd love to surprise everyone at the ceremony with movie-quality special makeup.